It's a great honor and an absolute privilege to be hosting an eminent panel like you at our Technology Game Changer series on global 5G trends and its implications for India's digital future. I'm Avinash, one of the founders of Global Talent Exchange. We are a global platform mobilizing emerging tech talent from skill-rich areas to areas with skill shortages. Technology today is pushing the boundaries of human possibilities and working towards making life better across the world by accelerating social and financial inclusion. It has also taken the critical task of making people and planet healthier. With India emerging as one of the largest technology hubs and companies in India chasing these audacious goals, it brings emerging tech at the forefront. The idea of this series is to trigger exchange of viewpoints among experts like yourselves and see how we are placed as a nation to seize the opportunity in each of these emerging tech areas. 5G promises to usher in not just new cases in every industry, but also new business models. Many proposed use cases, such as those enabling the augmented virtual reality, massive Internet of Things, fit right into the improving customer experience and enabling digital transformation of organizations. 5G has the capacity to support a huge number of connections simultaneously while improving speed, latency, reliability, and power consumption of handsets and IoT devices. As with the transition from 3G to 4G, there are many uncertainties. Where is the value coming from and who is it going to capture? What are the use cases where 5G performance enhancements will generate the most value and demand? And which application will most benefit from 5G? Let's hear it from the experts. Over to you, Professor, to steer this discussion forward. We have Professor Lal from the IIT Delhi, who will steer this discussion forward.
Yeah, thank you, Avinash. Thank you for setting this up. And this is indeed a privilege to moderate the panel, which is full of very, very eminent participants. As we go along, you will hear their views, and I'm sure you will come out very, very well informed about what 5G means to India and the world in general. So like Avinash has already said, there is a journey. 5G is not something that has come out of the blue, but it does represent a paradigm shift in which a shift in the way we look at technology, in the way we deploy technology, or at least intend to deploy technology. And therefore, it is quite important that we look very carefully at the journey. How have we reached this stage? And why is the shift from 4G to 5G slightly different from all the previous journeys that we've had so far? So before I start this discussion and put up a few questions to the panelists, it might be a good idea to hear a couple of words about the interests and their background for the benefit of the audience. So I will call each one, and I request you to say a couple of sentences about yourself to put your role in the discussion in perspective. Mr. Jalan from Dell, you first, please.
Right, sir. Okay, thank you. So good morning, everyone, and a good thanks for Avinash, Dr. Brijesh, for putting this together. I mean, it's a privilege, as you said, to be in presence of all the industry experts from India. So a quick introduction, a quick words about myself. So I'm currently working for Dell Technologies, heading their 5G operations for APJ, India and China region. I've been in this mobile industry for almost 25 years now. I started way back in 95, 96, when the GSM networks were just being installed in India. And I graduated from MNIT Jaipur, and I was picked by Siemens, who had the contract for installing SR cell phone network in Rajasthan. So I had the pleasure to be part of the team which made the first GSM call in Rajasthan. So very interesting and exciting days. So started with 2G, moved to Chandigarh, spent a year there for Spice Telecom, working there. Then end of N90s, I moved out of India, worked in various countries in Asia. Then early 2000s, I moved to Europe. That time 3G networks were just starting. Then towards the end of 2000s, then I moved to Japan for 4G LTE networks. And now I'm based in Singapore for the last 10 years and working on the 5G network. So I hope by the time I retire, I get a chance to work on the 6G networks as well. So yeah, so through and through mobile telecom, basically.
Thank you, Rahul. And next we have Rakesh Pandey Ericsson.
Hey, thanks, Brijesh, and good morning and good afternoon to everybody. And it's really nice platform, and as technologies are emerging and India wanted to have a lead, so I think this is a really good initiative, I can say. Now, something about myself, I have near about 20 to 23 years of experience in the purely in the telecom world, in wireless and the broadband. And I work in a different operators like in Airtel and in like earlier it was Reliance Infocom, long back time. And then after, I think I moved more on the product R&Ds like Alcatel and such companies. Now, currently I'm working with Ericsson, and I'm kind of responsible for complete 5G and new technology readiness and operationalize the whole ecosystem, how it should shape up from the kind of global perspective, right? And I was based out of India. So that's really unique experience. Like in India also is picking very fast for 5G. So I think that's all about, we will discuss and how we can take it forward, our initiative. Thanks, Brijesh. Thanks.
Thank you, Rakesh. Next we have Gaurav from Ericsson again.
Hi, everyone. I think thanks, Professor, and everyone for the great platform. I have roughly 21 years of experience. Other than the chip designing and sales, direct sales, I've pretty much done it all. First 16 years I've spent doing R&D, system engineering roles in Alcatel-Lucent, right from 2G, 3G, MSc, and then started the virtualization journey way back in 2009, early days of virtualization. So, and we have seen VMware growing up, VMware going down, OpenStack taking inception stage, and OpenStack become a reality. So all of that. 2019, I joined Ericsson. So I've done consulting, pretty much everything. I'm in 2019, I'm into 5G as a cross-domain architect, where we look at cloudification, basically network slice. So my day job is in the morning looking at an orchestration consulting work, and the evening job is looking at why the packet core stuff is not working in a customer network. So be in the POCs and making the future proofing of the network. That's about me. I've been an individual contributor all my life.
Yeah. Thank you, Gaurav. Interesting. So that'll provide us a unique perspective. Next, we have Ajay from Intel. Ajay, you might want to unmute yourself.
Sorry about that. Yeah. So thanks, Dr. Brijesh, Avinash, for this opportunity, and it's definitely a privilege to be with the esteemed panel. I work for Intel, been with Intel for 19 plus years. And I look at business development and strategy for Intel India, while I look at driving engagements with the ecosystem around network, data center AI, and also looking at kind of what are some of the key areas in which we can engage with the India ecosystem for broader Intel roadmaps. I'm currently based in Santa Clara, but I still work for Niviti. She's the country head for Intel India. I'm passionate about seeing how we can leverage some of the technologies that we build or the new technologies that are being innovated at a population scale. How we can bring the benefit to a very large set of people rather than just some select users. I've seen that it's a very unique challenge, but it needs a lot of focus, innovation, and belief. But in the end, at least, I think India has demonstrated that this can be good business if we kind of stay at it. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how we can bring the benefits of 5G and some of these other technologies to a broad base. And looking forward to the discussion.
Thank you, Ajay. Next, we have Ankur from Airtel.
Thank you, Professor. It's a really privilege to be part of this panel, and where we are discussing about the 5G use case journey and how to make the talents available within India. So myself, Ankur Chauhan, I'm part of Airtel R&D. I am IIT Guwahati graduate. So far, my whole experience lies in the R&D, and here I am leading the initiative within Airtel Engineering Initiative for 5G, academia collaboration. These are my focus area within Airtel. Thank you.
Thank you, Ankur. Next, we have Pamela Kumar from TSDSI.
Hello, good morning, and happy to be on this panel discussing a very important area for the future of technology development in this country. So I represent TSDSI, the Telecom Standards Development Society of India. I'm currently the Director General at TSDSI. TSDSI was formed in 2014. The idea was actually conceptualized by the Department of Telecommunication because they felt a need to establish an SDO similar to other global SDOs, so that as India moves on its journey from being primarily a consumer of technology to become a fair provider of IPR and technology in the global arena, they felt a need to establish an SDO like TSDSI. We currently have the Department of Telecommunication, the Ministry of IT, and also the Bureau of Indian Standards on our governing council. And along with more than 80 plus members from different segments of telecom ecosystem in the country, equipment providers, semiconductor manufacturers, R&D, startups, academia, all of them in our very active members. And in the arena of 5G, I mean, because of having a platform like TSDSI, it has been a great enabler to bring together all the talent in the country. And a proof of that has been that last year in December, there were only 2 specifications which were ratified by ITU for IMT 2020, which is also known as 5G. And the 2 were the 3GPP 5G, of which TSDSI is an organizational partner, and 5GI, the TSDSI 5GI, which was put together by the members of TSDSI and submitted at ITU. So a little bit about me. I started my career way back in 1985 at AT&T Bell Labs, building microprocessors for the 5ESS telephone exchange. Then I came back to India and joined CDOT. I was part of the hardware development team, wherein I developed an ASIC for the rural exchange, working with Semiconductor Complex, as well as I was built the processor complex for the 40,000 line exchange, the central office exchange, which triggered the landline revolution in India, the first telecom revolution in India based on indigenous technology. Then I did a few startups and moved to Texas Instruments, where I was part of the team where we developed the chipset for the 1,000 rupee cell phone. Okay, and this very much contributed to the second telecom revolution, the wireless revolution in India. Being able to build a 1,000 rupee cell phone was a very important part of that, and worked very closely with Nokia in those days. Sorry about that. Then later I was part of, 50% of my career has been on the telecom networking side and 50% on the data center side. And then I was at IBM, where I had server, networking, storage technology labs, 1,000-person lab with me, and also with HP. So then I ventured more into the cloud computing technologies. And now currently I'm, I also set up a Cloud Computing Innovation Council working with MeitY, where we set up the roadmap for cloud adoption in the country. And now I'm driving TSDSI, and this convergence that is happening between IT and telecom technology is really culminating in 5G is very exciting. And I'm looking forward to the discussion today.
Thank you, ma'am. We look forward to useful inputs from you and maybe also help us interoperate. Anyways, so next we have Prasanna from Nokia.
Hi, this is Prasanna Kumar. I work for the Nokia R&D Center in Bengaluru. Currently, I'm responsible for the R&D of Nokia base station software, particularly focusing on the transport networking domain. It has been more than 22 years of career, and all along it has been with the cellular technology, starting with 2G to 5G. And I'm associated with both R&D as well as the customer support for our customers in India and as well as the global market. I'm looking forward for this interesting discussion today.
Thank you, Prasanna. Next, we have Radhe from Jio.
So good morning, everybody, and thanks, Professor Brijesh and Avinash, for inviting me to share my views on this platform. I head the technology development for Reliance Jio, and I have close to 25 years of industry experience. I worked across multiple domains, which include technology, product and solution, market dynamics, systems and RF engineering, and I worked across multiple markets, including India, North America, and Europe. In terms of technology, I believe that these are very exciting times when a number of technologies, including 5G, AI/ML, cloud, IoT, all are maturing at the same time. So I think that we as a country can lead this technology revolution. Thanks.
Thank you, Radhe. And finally, we have Subhash from HFCL.
Yeah, good morning. Thank you, Professor Brajesh Lal and Avinash, for having me in this platform. So a little bit about me. In my current role, I am leading the 5G R&D activity for HFCL, a brand new initiative as part of Atmanirbhar Bharat. So I started my career 3 decades back in telecom. All my life I have been in telecom. I started in C-Dot. I was a colleague with Pamela, and I have seen all these great times creating the indigenous technology. And then I moved on to Wipro, second stint, pretty much 26 years, serving the global customers, all in R&D. So I have pretty much been involved into multiple global products of many names that you see here in the panel. Most of them were my customers creating the products in the outsourced model. Very excited to be back into my passion to create indigenous technology to make India technology self-sufficient. So I graduated from IIT Kharagpur in 91, and since then I have been working across different areas. Pamela talked about the first revolution on the telecom with the telephony services on wireline. So been there and then seen it firsthand, and then subsequently moved into wireless at the system level, as well as every part of the wireless network from development perspective I have seen. So very excited to be here.
Thank you so much, Subhash. So now that we're through the entire panel, the audience will realize that when I said that we have a very eminent panel, it wasn't an understatement. It is really a very strong panel that we have today. More than almost 250 years of experience in the panel put together, and they have contributed to markets all over the globe. So it's not just that they have experience within the country, but we're going to focus on what all of this means for India, but they have a perspective which goes way beyond having worked only for the Indian market. Thank you very much, everybody. And now let's get right into the panel. And we will start with a bit about the history. How did we get here? And Pamela, ma'am, if you could go first and tell us about this transition to 5G very quickly, and as to how we've gotten here.
So, I won't dwell too much on the 2G, 3G, 4G we know. 4G was an interesting revolution in India, bringing smartphones across the globe and data connectivity, where they started saying roti, kapda, makan and broadband are the essential necessities of life, the bare necessities of life, right? And we've seen how it has transformed, the man on the street, essentially the man in, not only in the street, but the man in every corner of our villages. Their lives have been transformed with this technology, and so much it has enabled. So what is the vision of 5G, right? The 5G with the famous triangle at ITU, defined at ITU, with the enhanced mobile broadband, MMTC, massive machine type communication, and ultra reliable and low latency communication. So 5G is really about getting into the verticals. And so communication is no longer a vertical, it's become a horizontal in its true sense. And the convergence of communication and IT has truly happened in the 5G era, so to say. And now, it's about taking all this technology, including applications like drones and robotics, combining them into this, and taking them into all kinds of use cases in the vertical. So it's basically the revolution now is about use cases, vertical industries, every aspect of how we live, how we work, how we play, how we go to war. Every aspect is being transformed with technology. So understanding the use cases and building these solutions and positioning them in the right place in the triangle, right? You don't need the same level of reliability or the same level of density for every application. Some are densities, need more density. Some require more speed, throughput, right? Some require more reliability and lower latency. So you need to position your use case at the right place and build solutions for that. So I think that's basically how I would like to position the new journey. And as we go along, we will talk about India's specific journey. I see that Mr. A.K. Mittal from TSDSI, who is our senior advisor and was also senior DDG of TEC, has also joined us. And Professor Lal, you may want to introduce him as well.
Welcome to the panel, Mr. Mittal. A couple of words about yourself. Every other panelist has introduced themselves, and then we will continue from here. Mr. Mittal, a couple of words, please.
Thank you, Professor Lal. I am A.K. Mittal, currently working as advisor networks with TSDSI for about 4 years now. Prior to that, I was in DOT throughout my life almost, and worked in various positions. In the end, I was head of the Telecom Engineering Center, which lays down the standards and specifications for telecom products, and also the apex body for standards in India as far as telecom is concerned. So after retiring from there, after some time, I joined TSDSI as advisor. And my areas of focus are basically ITUR and 3GPP, and also other works in study group networks of TSDSI. Thank you very much.
Thank you for making time, Mr. Mittal. So back to the panel. Thank you, Pamela ma'am, for that brief but interesting introduction to the transition to 5G. And now I'd want to move over to Radhe and request him to give us a bit more specifics, and he's quite apt, the right panelist to answer this, given that the 4G revolution was driven largely by Jio. So Radhe, could you tell us a little more specifics about how this evolution from 4G to 5G is happening and will happen?
Thanks, sure. Thanks, Professor Brijesh. To put to my answer in the context, I would say that we typically see a new generation of cellular wireless technology once in a 10-year period. Right. And in India, we started from 2G and now we are at 4G. Now, if we look at 2G enabled voice and SMS, the 3G enabled web low-speed data, and 4G enabled video and high-speed data. One common theme from 2G to 4G is that they only focused on one segment, which is consumer segment. And when it comes to 5G, what we see, first of all, 5G will provide scale of order magnitude improvement over 4G when it comes to cell capacity or throughput or latency. Now, with these improvements, 5G is going to target not just consumer segment, but also home, enterprise, and vertical industry segment. And that's what is going to make it a horizontal platform, as Pamela also mentioned. And I believe that's the revolutionary part of 5G. Now, with these capabilities, 5G will support a long tail of use cases across industries, across segments. And of course, Pamela talked about the famous ITU triangle, which basically put all the 5G use cases across three categories, the EMBB, URLLC, and MMTC, But if I may share that these categories, they represent the vertex of the triangle, which are the extreme scenarios. But as we move along the side of the triangle, let's say from EMBB to URLLC, there is a gradual transition wherein basically the throughput requirement may not be as stringent as we move from EMBB to URLLC, but latency requirement will become more and more stringent. So what I would like to say is that there are so many use cases across different segments that 5G is going to support, and we are at the beginning of the beginning. I would say that although some countries have already deployed 5G, but most of it is in non-standalone mode, wherein LTE is being used as an anchor, and then it is riding on 4G core. So with that kind of an architecture, we can only support EMBB's family of use cases. So we are yet to basically graduate into a standalone architecture wherein we can support the other two category of use cases, namely URLLC and MMTC. Those are the revolutionary aspect of 5G that I would say. And to summarize, you rightly mentioned that Jio created the digital revolution in India, which is fueled by the ubiquitous 4G coverage. And I believe that the future of digital progress crucially depends on the rollout of ultra high speed and low latency 5G network. Thanks.
Thank you, Radhe, for a very interesting perspective. There are a couple of things that we need to take a note of from what he said. The first thing is that there's a change in by orders in the performance expectations. The other thing that is very clearly evident from what Pamela and Radhe said is that all of a sudden you're not just targeting a single consumer market. Your potential clients span a lot of areas, and also there is this multiple use cases that people are talking of. So all of a sudden the breadth of the offering has increased manifold. The performance figures have increased multifold. So this is not a jump, it's a leap. And finally, the way people understand it is as the three nodes of the triangle, and as Radhe correctly points out, that there are also these sides which represent a gradual transition. So with this slightly broad overview of what 5G is about, let us move into the specifics of the three nodes and the three edges that Radhe mentioned will become clear as we move along this panel discussion. So first of all, I'd like to call on Prasanna to tell us a little more about the EMBB aspect of 5G, what it means, what it's about, and its implications. Prasanna, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Professor. EMBB, Enhanced Mobile Broadband, as we others spoke, it's one of the three main use cases defined by 3GPP. EMBB is all about high-speed data. So if you look back the COVID-19 situation, it initially looked as if the COVID is slowing down the progress of 5G, but it soon turned into a catalyst. So as people became more reliant on communication networks, be it is education or work or social contact, the need for high-speed, high-bandwidth connectivity became acute. And many operators in the world started focusing more on 5G deployments and started doubling their efforts towards 5G. So now, unlike other technologies where the focus was mainly connecting the smartphones of an user, the majority of the 5G connections will be to devices, machines, chips, and sensors, rather than just a connection to people's smartphone. So it clearly shows there is definitely a consumer opportunity, but the larger opportunity for 5G comes from industries and enterprise. So if to understand this EMBB concept a little more, so we could take a couple of examples. So one is the fixed wireless access. So 5G is actually looked at as an alternative to home broadband. So that is, the 5G operators can soon start competing with the wired or fiber connected broadband operators and provide a reliable home broadband connections. So it can also cater to the small and medium-sized businesses. So that way, the 5G enables the e-education, especially in the current context. So where we need to take the education to the remote areas and the schools in the rural areas, where we can take the education to the doorsteps of people, breaking this physical barrier. So thus 5G can enable, it can make a social impact as well, not just in the urban areas, but also in the rural areas. So when we come to the small and medium-sized businesses, so it can give a reliable high-speed data connection. And we could see that, in the COVID-19 situation, the way of working, even for the corporate employees, is changing, bringing either a partial or a permanent work from home options. So 5G will boost that, the work from home experience, making it a long-term and a viable option. So that's, it brings a lot of capital and operational expenses savings for the company, bringing in, economic impact as well. When it comes to the social experience for the people, right? So we can just imagine downloading an 8K movie on a 4G system versus a 5G system. The 5G can make it, almost 500% faster than a 4G device. So you imagine, the user experience. So now it is a social or economic or a social experience. The 5G starts boosting all this experience because of this eMBB, the high data rate application. So there is an example of the Zain operator case, Zain KSA in Saudi Arabia. So where they are rolling out nearly 60,000 Nokia-enabled fast-mail 5G wireless access points. So there they are bringing that the home broadband connection to the homes and as well as the small offices in the kingdom. So a pretty good live example of eMBB application there. Another big application is the smart stadium. The smart stadium is all about the best view from every seat in the stadium. I could say it that way. So we can imagine the atmosphere in a large sports stadium or a large musical concert. The atmosphere itself will be electrifying, be it a cricket match or a football match in an arena. And 5G can make that experience even more gripping, by providing the fans with immersive high definition video streaming, where the user can see every player in every angle possible on their handheld devices. So that's making that experience for the watcher or the audience much more better. So it can also bring certain data and statistics on the user devices, as well as the opportunity for merchandise and the services business together with the game watching. So these are couple of examples. So where eMBB making a big impact, and in fact in Perth, Australia, the operator Optus has already deployed this smart stadium applications, with the Nokia-enabled 5G systems there. So I would say that eMBB is a vital aspect of the 3GPP 3 use cases, making a big difference, be it is social, economical, economics, or the education field. Thank you.
Thank you, Prasanna. That's an interesting take. So, so eMBB is important because it represents that one connection that we have from evolving from 4G towards 5G. The other two, as we will see shortly, represent a different take on communication. And another interesting thing that came up in this set of points that Prasanna raised was that even during COVID, the importance of this technology became more and more apparent. So not only did it just survive, it actually thrived. So the nature selection of survival of the fittest. So in the current setting, I think this represents a very, very fit technology to take the world forward. Thank you for those interesting points, Prasanna. Now we move on to the other two nodes of the triangle, and I will request Gaurav to say a few words quickly about concurrency and maybe initiate the discussion on URLLC before we take it to Subhash. So over to you, Gaurav.
Yeah, thanks, Professor. So I think as Pamela and Radhe pointed out very clearly, as well as Prasanna, see, I look at it 5G network as a transport highway. It's the analogy is a transport highway. So when you look at a highway in India, highway between Delhi and Gurgaon, you see two-wheeler moving at a separate speed. You see high-speed car moving. You also see public transportation moving. So 5G network has become actually equivalent of a transport highway. Now, what you get out of it, is basically a use case. How do you want to use that? Whether you want to run a car which can go only at 40 km per hour, or whether you want to run a car which is very safe, can run only at 20 km per hour at high speed. Now, keeping those consideration in mind, the IMT or ITU has categorized these things. So there are EMBB, URLCC, and massive IoT. I will also add another flavor to which FWA, fixed wireless access, as another dimension. The reason is 5G has done three fundamental things. First, we need to understand. One is every time there is a advancement in the 4G, we have been talking about spectral efficiency, that able to send more bits per megahertz of a frequency. So that has been a constant endeavor, right from 2G to 3G to 4G to 5G. So there's no denying on that fact. Second is, even with that, even with the better spectral efficiency, what we have tried doing is we have tried using the radio waves energy to focus using beam formation for a better experience. Now that better experience could be by a user or a mobile handset user, or it could be by an enterprise customer. Now here, coming to massive IoT, FWA, and critical IoT or URLCC, what we have done is we have categorized 5G from multiple dimensions: latency, device density in the network, mobility, reliability, availability, speed, and throughput. Now you pick 8 of them, and out of these 8, combination of 3 or more would classify a different class of service. For example, FWA is more for your fixed wireless access. In a lot of countries in Europe, what we are seeing is, because of this pandemic, the broadband cost of deploying FWA, providing broadband to home using FWA has considerably decreased compared to the cost of fiber. So FTTH as a technology taking a backseat, because FWA from 5G is becoming more prominent, easy to deploy, easy to operate. That's part one. For massive IoT and critical IoT, what we have tried doing is massive IoT, small devices like your smart cities, your smart meters, connected cars. I would still say connected cars, sending a lot of, like a Google Map application. So you can make a good decision to navigate, a city traffic. You can also do a telemedicine. You can have a doctor sitting somewhere, can do a consult of your education is one forte where you can use massive IoT, metering devices, CCTV monitoring, all of this for citizen services. This is one aspect. Critical IoT, when I say critical IoT or URLCC, autonomous cars, because the latency needs are high. Because if it is a self-driven car, you want the decision to be made very faster. Otherwise, the car may hit a roadblock. What we are seeing, that Tesla cars getting into the accident in the US. So you can improve that. Now, the better part of this is India has a lot of accidental death. Now, if I have a connected car or an autonomous car, realize here, there are roughly around 2 lakhs people who died because of the accident. You can actually use some of these use cases to fulfill the precision gap created by human skill gap, even across industry, across function. So that's a very strong use case that I feel very passionately about, because self-driven car, if you can bring down 20% of the death rate less, that will be a huge advantage, because the accidental death actually has a huge economic impact on the family as well as a nation. So, and latency is one need, and another point is robotic surgery. We have seen people doing robotic surgery, doctor instructing it from the remote, and because the capacity in terms of number of humans who can be a very super specialized doctors, or can be available at every place. So there we can use URLCC, a robotics arm doing the surgery in the remote part of the country where it is not possible just in time for a doctor to arrive or reach. So all of that. So disparity in terms of resources of a country like India or any big country, so those disparity in terms of education, disparity in terms of healthcare, disparity in terms of citizen service, all of that could be handled by your massive IoT and critical IoT. So in a way, there is a saying we say in Ericsson, technology for good. So our CEO keeps reverberating it, that 5G is basically for a connected society, is a technology for good. So with that, I think I'll sum it up. 5G actually gives you a like a highway, transport highway. You can use it for whatever need you want it. All the previous G innovation, more in terms of spectral efficiency, cell site efficiency, all of that has come in. Along with that, we also brought in the cloudification to the network. So that makes the agility to operate, agility to monitor, agility to build, agility to optimize this whole network really simple or really easy.
Thank you for that, Gaurav. So given the breadth of this technology and the depth of the knowledge of the panel, we'll always be struggling with time. And I've already run out of time for the first set of questions. So Subhash, I request you to talk about URLLC and slowly move us to the next part of the discussion, which is on emerging tech, including AI and ML. So Subhash, I would request you to touch upon URLC and slowly guide us towards AI, ML and its role in 5G and beyond.
Yeah, thanks, Professor Brajesh. And I was listening to the previous speakers, Radhe, Prasanna, and Gaurav. So if I really look at it, 5G becoming the use case centric, the enterprise centric, and very different set of user requirements coming in. The artificial intelligence cannot be far away from that. So I specifically will pick up the analogy that Gaurav picked up. He talked about the 5G as a highway. So what I would say is, if previous generation technologies like 4G was a state highway, it has become a national highway. And in this national highway, you also have a high-speed access to this national highway. The highway is just not a transport, but it also has the highway restaurants, the highway residential complexes, the highway, the hotels, and the luxury resorts. Right. Now, when you think about it, the traditional network has been a transport network, but it is also 5G has brought in the computing capabilities. So the cloud computing, the edge computing is integral part of it. Now, when all of these things come together, there is a need for intelligence, there is a need for federation. So specifically on URLLC. So if you look into remote driving or telesurgery, this kind of use cases, which has a combination of cyber physical systems, augmenting with human intelligence, collaborative robot in the manufacturing floor, all of that require a lot of intelligence, and that is extremely fast. It is not that you can really delay it. So I would say that URLCC as an example, many of the cases, so I will not get too much into technology. If you look into FR1 versus FR2, I think there was a conversation on the beamforming. There was a conversation on the stadium experiences. If you really look at some of them, if I have to give the driver assist to avoid the accident as an example, the key question is, how do I provide that capability? So if somebody is about to hit a barricade or a human or a life, I would like to assist. I have two options. Option number one, I can have the intelligence right in the car, like a Tesla car with a supercomputer embedded into the car. Second option I have is give a high-speed connectivity to an intelligence node, which can essentially assist a large number of users rather than a upgraded car, which is not affordable. So if I have to look into India context, can edge computing with the connectivity and intelligence federation from the edge computing as that? Look into the stadium experience. Prasanna talked about stadium experience. If I had to give this video analytics to identify the users or the players, or really to pick up a camera feed, would I go all the way to the cloud, or do I federate it from the edge computing node? Those are the intelligent decisions, right? So if I look at application of AI in the context of 5G, it is a combination of the application layer and the network layer, cross-coupling them together, understanding the telemetry and the construct of the network, and then making sure the domain-specific services are provided to them. Now, if you want to do that, making a doctor takes 10 years to make a good doctor. Making a C programmer, it probably takes 1 year to make a good C programmer. So domain is always hard. The key question is, if I want to make an AI agent that can become a doctor, it's a lot of work, and that happens only because domain learning, domain topology, the knowledge graph creation is a lot more complex. So I think that what is happening is with this national highway and this connotation, fundamentally, 5G is becoming a conduit, not only to give the transport pipe, but also host the intelligence in the very fabric of it and cross leverage and then make the life easy for everybody, right? So that is how I would say. So we can go a little bit in the AI construct of it. There is a lot of application happening, both at the way the network is constructed. Open RAN, for example. I want to do the beam forming management. Do I do the deterministic way of doing things based on the CSI, or do I have a pattern based learning algorithm and then I figure out intuitively take decisions? So once I have gathered that intelligence, I probably can take faster decision making. There may be mistakes at times. So the beam steering, some of the capability to reduce the interference noise and the power consumption, it's very complicated. So the deterministic applications like the beam weight calculation and all, it runs into a very large amount of memory location. The FPGA size goes high. Can I optimize it? So AI is all about resource optimization, both at the network layer and in a cross coupling manner. So sorry, I have taken a little longer, but with that I will pause.
Thank you, Subhash. Thank you for painting this very clear picture using the highways as example and the luxury resorts. I'm sure even the layman is now interested to know more about 5G. Thank you for that. And there's one more interesting thing that you talked about, the car example where you talked about cars being connected to a central cloud. So there is another advantage that setup offers. Not only is there a cost advantage, each car can be cheaper, but now you can make decision based on more information, because now you have information from multiple cars and also probably the traffic infrastructure and not just a single car. Thank you for that. So communication is very, very important. It is probably a multiplying enabler rather than just a incremental enabler for such technologies. Thank you for that, Subhash. Now I want another perspective on AI and ML, because AI and ML and 5G are both very, very important techs and both have a very, very important role to play in the medium term or maybe even in the long term. So I would want to invite Rakesh to present his views on the same, please.
Thanks, Brijesh. And from my perspective, I think as I have a common background of R&D and the very hands-on operation, right? So I will put the AIML perspective on that term, right? Mm-hmm. And while saying so, and I will just start with the 5G part, right? Because I personally don't feel like 5G is just another G adding like we did it for 2G, 3G, 4G, and 5G, right? Mm-hmm. So just adding this 5G in the whole ecosystem of our telco, it's completely changing this, the way we work, the way we behave, the way we connect with the people, right? And while saying so, and Prasanna has been very good, kind of very state example of highway and then connected with the Gaurav and all that, how all the things are there. And when you go to the practical aspects, it's a bit true, because when you are deploying the 5G, you are entering into the many more interfaces in the network in terms of IoT, in terms of security complications. Now your refrigerator will be another SIM for you while just sitting in the right? And then whether this refrigerator vendor and all will have a right set of security and all, like be able to do the handsets and all. So those type of complications are going to come for us. Then like type of a few panelists already informed the type of latency, low latency we require, the type of use cases are coming. So these all the things, all the complications and the network also kind of increase the operational complexity also, because as much as application, as much of slices, as much of people, as much of interface you will add it. So it's all give you the bigger picture, bigger use cases, much more reliability on the network and options. And along with that, you have a kind of complexity also with respect to handling the whole network, right? Whole ecosystem. So while saying so, right, in that what the perspective which I wanted to give is that these all the things which we are trying to manage, it is going to create the humongous amount of data, because that is the one area where each and every global operator is thinking we are going to get many dynamics as a use case, as a user, how I'm going to use that data more effective and then feedback to my normal use cases and the normal customer experience to enhance that, right? And the only answer to handle this complexity and security concern is putting the things in an AI/ML perspective, because normal automation, so scripting is no more going to work out on that area, right? So putting the AI/ML construct, having the huge amount of data handling and analytics is the kind of answer for the 5G network and operational complexity. So that's one point is that. Now, while saying so, how our India can kind of take the lead on it, help on it, right? Because India was always the software hub, right? We always say like 70% of the world software is supplied by India, and it's a unique positioning for our Indian people and the Indian talent to come and start seeing the whole ecosystem of 5G, not even India perspective, how we can enable globally and improve the life of the people while using our software excellence skill, and do the many kind of artificial algorithms, ML algorithm and other things which can really help people as well as operators or as well as the other enterprise user to make their best use of 5G, best use of data, and best use of kind of your use cases which are coming. Because if our AI/ML part is strong, we are good decision maker based on the best data analytics, accuracy is 100%, then all the use cases of this connected car, then kind of medical use cases on the 5G is going to be reality. So AI/ML has a big role to play in 5G, and especially India and Indian talent has a big role to play and help the society and drive the complete 5G initiative, not only in India, globally. So that's what my say on the AI/ML, not going into the more technical perspective and all, right? But this is how AI/ML will enable India journey and India growth and empower other global operators and global leaders to take a decision and use the best use of 5G. So that's a very quick and short from my side, Brijesh, and over to you.
Thank you, Gaurav. So that's useful, a different perspective, but we're saying the same thing. So you're looking at what AI means to 5G. This is from the perspective of what AI means to 5G, and it is extremely important. But what we must also understand is the other. One of the reasons why AI/ML is becoming a possibility today is 5G, or rather the improving communication and connectivity capabilities. Okay, so now I will have to hasten the whole process a little. We're running a little slower than we should be. So I quickly invite Ankur to say a few words on security, and after which, I'll have to skip a couple of points and you come back to the panelists a little later. So Ankur, over to you. Some comments on security, because when technology improves, what it also does is it exposes it to exploitation. And when it is exploited by the people who want to misuse it, there have to be provisions built in to ensure that security of the user and of the providers maintained. So any comments on that, Ankur?
Thank you, Professor. Yeah, it's a very important point. In fact, like when I pick from the thread which Pamela left, right? So 5G is a need. After Roti Kapda Makan, communication is the need, and that it has to be secured. The use case the panelists have talked about are 5G specific use case. They really required a good precision and a good security. When we talk about remote surgery, when we talk about driverless cars, there is no margin of error which can be expected. The other dimension of the security is along with 5G, there are other initiatives like Open RAN, which are going in parallel, and they are kind of feeding the innovation as well, which is a totally different aspect where multiple vendors are coming together, and how the overall system becomes secure when there are, how the certification, when software, hardware, and everything is coming from a different ecosystem, how the combinedly it is a full proven secure model. Other aspect, as some of my friends triggered about, discussed about the automation, AI, ML. So that I'll say it's more like agility of the network. When there are many aspects which network supposed to solve, going from reliability, going from eMBB to URLCN to massive communication, how fast network can adapt to these different use cases, and is there any security breach into that? So there are new interfaces coming along with 5G, and when we talk about Open RAN, there are new interfaces on top of that coming. So to secure all those interfaces is a new need, new challenge. There is I'm sure there's a good amount of work happening in all the forums, but these are the new interfaces which we are coming. They has to be fully secured. Other part is we are going to do a lot of work on the analytics in coming into the 5G, the whole story of the automation, right? So how the data which is stored somewhere on some server, we ensure that it is fully encrypted and secure, because any leakage of that data can also be a security hazard. So considering the time consideration, what I'll say, Professor, is that there are so many flexibility 5G is providing. Open RAN is coming up with multi-vendor ecosystem. There are many use cases which are handling, but at the same time, security on all these aspects has to be foolproof.
Right. Yeah. Thank you for that, Ankur. Now, so that has given us a perspective on the kind of security challenges that we face in today's world. So Radhe, I quickly want you to comment on how important or how high are they in the list of priorities for the concerns that service providers have in deployments of 5G. So does security figure anywhere in the list of concerns?
Indeed, Professor Brijesh, and I think more so, given that if we look at the earlier generation of technologies, they were only providing use cases limited to consumer segment. And given that now 5G is going to target multiple segment, including home enterprise and vertical industry segment, and some of the use cases that we talked about, they are critical IoT type of use cases. So security indeed becomes very important. And intuitively, we can understand that security has evolved a lot as we have moved from 2G to 5G. If I may share a few examples, like in 2G, we used to do one-way authentication, only network authenticated the UE. In 3G, 4G, we did like mutual authentication. And if we look at 5G, and I'm specifically talking about 5G standalone, because in 5G, NSA security is same as 4G. So in 5G standalone, the security is further enhanced. For example, integrity protection is added for data plane, given that 5G is expected to carry a lot of IoT related aspects such as command and control, which will go as payload. Therefore, the payload must not be tampered with, and therefore integrity protection has been added in data plane as well. Subscriber identity spoofing is mitigated by concealing the same. And also, if you look at 5G SA, it includes an option of secondary authentication, which can do slice level authentication. So there has been quite a lot of improvement. And I'll summarize on security part with a quote from the famous Spider-Man movie, where the uncle of Peter Parker, Ben Parker, mentions that with great power comes the great responsibility. So eventually the 5G have to be secured, given that it's much more powerful compared to the previous generation of technologies. And I strongly believe that 5G will live up to the expectations. With that, I pause.
Thank you, Ajay. Very well connected to the situation we find ourselves in. Thank you for that. Quickly, a couple of words from Ajay now. So there are a lot of tech. We could, continue to discuss this for days and still not cover all the tech aspects that 5G involves. But now what I want to look at is what are the top tech trends as far as 5G is concerned. So where are the companies investing? Ajay, do you want to take a jab at that?
Sure. Yeah, I can. Yeah, I mean, if you look at it, right, there are certain mega trends that are kind of driving 5G. So there is we talk about having artificial intelligence coming in, intelligent edge coming in, and there is cloudification of everything. So all of these are kind of I would say trends that are driving how this technology will kind of get used or deployed, which is further driving the investments that different companies are making. And since there is going to be, for a change, a lot of people highlighted that it's going to go from something that was in the realm of what you call the consumer space to actually going broader into machine-to-machine ultra reliability. The few areas where there is we do expect investment and innovation to happen, the trends that are driving. I think one part that, at least from our experience, we found is the intersection of compute and connectivity. So, typically we used to see connectivity as just making two points to be able to talk to each other, send some data, and then compute used to happen in one of these places. There is a lot of focus that is coming on how these two things can be interacting with each other, which is driving a move towards private networks, industrial use cases. So you will see that there is a lot of investment other than the eMBB, which is, I would say, more extension of what we saw in 4G, but a lot of focus towards ultra reliability, low latency type of use cases. Another trend that is happening, which is driving investment from everybody, and you see there every day there is some kind of a deal happening or some strategic partnership being announced, is how the cloud providers are moving into being able to offer services for mobile or mobile core. So I think while there are things that still will be worked out in terms of performance and regulatory adherence, etc., but this is again an area where almost everybody is investing. So you see all the big cloud providers looking at investing and getting ready for some of these software, but also the telecom providers starting to look at how they can adopt more of cloud native software that believes in the cloud first mindset, etc. I think one interesting thing that I see from where I think India gets some opportunity is around 5Gs, because of the open standards that are taking root. I think there is a significant momentum around O-RAN. So this becomes again something, a lot of investment being done in the industry, but probably something there where I believe that India can take a leadership role. It works well with our large software ecosystem, gives us an ability to kind of design the systems that we really want to have. So there is choice, there is scale. So it's kind of quite important and an interesting area to look at. Then off-the-shelf hardware, because of these open standards, there is an opportunity to actually start looking at how can you create hardware options that work for some of these virtualized and cloud-based solutions, bring in AI, bring in acceleration to help with some of the network management and other areas. Another that I think is also, we've seen that a lot of investment, future looking, that is going into these areas. And last but not the least, I think Subhash brought this, I mean, a couple of people also highlighted this earlier, is in the end, it's about building some of those applications for the domain. So be it around virtual reality or robotics or autonomous vehicles, each one of us talked about it. But that is also going to be an area where a lot of people are investing. So telecom companies are going to become service providers for this. So there's a lot of investment to actually get that use case right, get that experience right, get the business model right, so that these services can actually get deployed. So it's not as much of pure play tech, but also just figuring out how to play in some of those industries that is actually playing a role. So all in all, I would say it's basically very, very interesting area, intersection of compute, connectivity, and deploying it at scale. So people are making investments across all these areas.
Thank you. Thank you, Ajay, for bringing all of these points out and making it clear for us to understand. We will revisit O-RAN a little while later. And of course, there's this huge push for off the shelf as well, which is changing the game and making India a very, very viable destination for building solutions. So before we move to the next section, I'll request Rahul and Gaurav to say a couple of sentences only on two important trends. One, I think that I want to talk about is orchestration and slicing. So Gaurav, a couple of sentences on that, please.
Yeah, hi, Professor. So orchestration, see, a couple of things here is how this 5G ecosystem, what Rakesh and Subhash, everybody talked about, what is this resulting into? I'll be a little bit of a tech here. The way I look at the whole thing is you have a physical layer, then you have a virtualization layer, and then you have application layer, and then you have a management and orchestration layer, 4 layers. How does orchestration differs from automation? Automation is basically, making single activity efficient. Orchestration is making a series of activity more efficient. How does this apply to today in the PNF world or physical node function, or prior to 4G when there was no virtualization in the network? What used to happen is network design, deploy, optimize, and operate. It was very people intensive, long lead time. Design and planning will take 6 months, another 2 weeks for and then ordering in the hardware. This was what was happening is, let's say there is a surge in the need of a user or a use case by an operator. By the time you build that service, the window of opportunity is gone. Now, coming to this orchestration, all of that used to happen in 6 months or years. You can do a lifecycle management right from onboarding, instantiation, scale in, scale out, termination, upgrade, all of it at a click of a second, or at a click of a button, or completely autonomous. So orchestrations, because 5G has adopted cloudification, containerization, and virtualization, orchestration, standard from 3GPP makes it happen. So I can have these 4 layer, solution supplied by any vendor. That's one. Second, the way we used to design, operate, optimize, and develop a network, deploy a network, that can happen with a less people intensive. So today you can deploy a network in just a click of a button, scale in, scale out. For example, I'll give you a simple example. Till the 3G regime, what used to happen is we used to have a very definite, in the voice call scenario, we used to have a very definite, busy hour call attempt early in the morning or late in the evening when people were traveling back from offices to home. But today, after the advent of 4G, somebody, there is a sale in the middle of the noon at a Skechers showroom. People go in, they start, transmitting data or images, and then it becomes a busy hour right there. How do you handle, your packet core node handle that kind of scenario? Because you have not provisioned it. So today your networks are at least 18 hours on. For 18 hours a day, they are actually busy. You cannot say this is, morning they are busy or afternoon they are busy and evening they are not busy. So what you need a complete autonomous network, which can get spinned off, scale out, scale in, basically increase the capacity to handle the increased traffic, or decrease the capacity when the traffic is no longer there. So orchestration makes this happen. Second is network slice and orchestration is Somebody talked about private network. Somebody talked about, see, earlier people used to have, enterprise used to have their own network, on-premises devices, a lot of money investing in, a lot of money to operate and deploy. And then, CSP roles were, operator roles were just, subscriber service provider. Now those roles are merging. Network slice is just nothing but a logical or virtualized network, offering you same QoS, same capacity, same characteristics as your physical network used to offer. Now the advantage here is enterprise, which used to build their own private network, their own on-prem equipment investment, all of that. So there is a ROI improvement for a enterprise customer. So he can look for a network slice, and that network slice is enabled by your orchestration. So with that, I'll sum it up. I'll hand it over to Rahul.
Thank you. Rahul, on
Thanks,
MEC.
Gaurav. Well covered. So Brijesh, you want me to cover the MEC?
Yeah, please.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So I'll be short and just talk a little bit more about what MEC is and why do we need it, and what are the there is a key business implication of this MEC. So we will try to touch upon that as well. So MEC is multi-access edge computing, right? So we all know. So computing basically is bringing computing power close to the edge. Edge word basically, for me, the way I define edge is anything which is close to the user, because there's a lot of far edge, near edge, mid edge, all these terms. But edge essentially means that you're bringing the computing power and hosting those applications as close to the user as possible in 5G, and 5G enables that thing. The multi-access basically is because initially it started with mobile only, but then the 3GPP and ITU, I think they soon realized that there could be fixed wireless and Wi-Fi or 5G, whatever kind of RF environment there is, they can all be used to access this MEC. So that's what MEC is. And if you look at why do we need it? So, I mean, we touched upon it earlier as well. So in 2G, we had voice only, 3G, we started a little bit of data, 4G, massive data, I'll say. Now you can watch Netflix sitting in a park and, 4K, everything is all okay. But now the new things which are coming in, again, we talked a lot about latency. So in latency, you have these sub-millisecond requirements. So if you look at robotic surgery, connected cars, now you don't really have time to send all the data from the user back to the core, because you're fighting the speed of light now. So sub-millisecond basically means that a connected car, it has to send the data back and it has to get the instructions back within in microseconds or sub-millisecond kind of scenario. So that's just not possible for the core. And that's why you need to bring this computing power close to the user as much as possible, which is the edge thing. The second thing we talked about is the data. So yeah, we talked about eMBB, but till now we have been looking at data from the network down to the user perspective, right? Again, watching Netflix is the use case. But we have to understand now a connected car generates 1 gigabytes of data per second. And these smart hospitals, remote surgeries, and smart factories, it's 3 to 4K terabytes of data per day. So that kind of data, if you're going to bring it back to the core, it will destroy your network. I mean, there's no way you can bring it, they will flood your network, and unnecessarily it's no point. So you, again, because of this heavy data requirement at the user end, you need this computing power very close to the user. Example could be, like a video streaming. You are monitoring a lot of factories with video analytics and all. You do not want to bring those video feeds back to the core and then send it back, the results. You want them processed at the edge, which is closest to the user, and only send the, the summary back or whatever thing is needed back to the core. So that's the, the driving force behind this MAC. And third thing, of course, is this enterprises have this privacy concerns that it should not leave the premises and all those things. So that's another thing. And one of the key business implications that I want to talk about is, and this is a challenge that globally we are all facing, in 2G, 3G network, these look at from operators' point of view, they were thriving, right? Making a lot of money and a lot of value brought to the customers. What happened from 4G? All the value is actually being taken by the OTT players like Netflix and all these people. So network is just being treated as a pipe. they're making a lot of money. AWS, cloud people, all these application providers, Google, they're thriving, whereas the operators are dying, right? You have seen in India what happens. Vodafone Idea is verge of very bad financials, and it's not only India. I talk to operators all over the globe, and it's the same everywhere. Like, you take the balance sheet for the last 3-4 years of any operator, it's going down because they have been reduced to a pipe. That's it, and all the value is being appropriated by the other OTT players and all. So what MEC now does is, now they cannot do that in 5G because now that MEC is driven by the telco itself. So telco will put a MEC edge node in the enterprise environment. It could be connected to their CUDU or whatever configuration they have. But now these OTT players or any new applications of this connected cars or Uber, they will come up with something, I'm sure. They have to go by the telco operator now. And that's where the operator makes money, because now they can demand that this MEC is part of my network. If you want your application to be enabled and running to, provided to my users, you have to go via me. And that's the biggest opportunity which the operators are looking at. And that's why we see 5G is like a new blood coming to the operators, and now they will thrive because this is the moment they've been waiting for, because now, the value comes back to the telco operators and they will have a lot of power. And MEC, I'll say, it's like the magic thing which is in the 5G which has come in, which will enable all that. So yeah, I'll stop there just in the interest of time, but it's a very passionate topic for me.
Yes, I can understand the passion with which you spoke. Thank you so much, Rahul. That was very, very interesting. And it's heartening to note that there's an opportunity for the service providers also to make money, because they've been doing all the hard work, the heavy lifting, and they've been bereft of most of the revenues that this industry makes. And of course, security, latency, privacy is something that MEC will enable. The reason we talked about these 2 or 3 tech trends in particular is that, I and probably a lot of people in the panel here feel that the way these 3 evolve over a period of time will have a huge implication in the rollout and acceptance of 5G as a technology. So that is why we spent a little more time on them. And now let's move into something else which will drive how well or poorly 5G is deployed in the country. And this is policy and spectrum. So here I want to take 2 perspectives. I will ask Rakesh to talk about the expectations of the industry, of the people who build technology. What are they expecting in terms of the spectrum band availability, the policy, the way it should be decided, the kind of regulations that should be put in place. And then I'll request Pamela or Mr. Mittal, whoever is the right person for this, to bring in the nation's perspective, the government's perspective on the use of spectrum and policy framing. Start with Rakesh.
Yeah, thanks, Professor Jess. So yes, if you really see from the band perspective, the first requirement of any industry and the users are coming is that, right, whatever all 3 bands are available, right, low, mid, and high band, the supported equipments, the supported technologies, and all the respective thing which is required to handle the whole ecosystem should be made available for the users and for the operators. So that's the one of the top priority, because as everybody explained, that if your bands and radios are well intact and valuable from the equipment perspective and vendors supporting that, then I think your first step to comply and have the usability is done. Now, and then coming to one is that the access part or something, right? Another important thing which most of the panelists has touched upon is that about having your virtualization network, right? And the kind of, I can say, the respective QoS maintenance, slicing need to be done properly. To all have this, all the things, you have to have the very good kind of, as just say that like MEC things are there which should be available, and it's very adaptive for all the vendors and supplier to be available on time, and delivery for our operators and other things. And then another part is that when we talk about this user experience and usability of the technology, then how fast is available, which is already very nicely covered by the Gaurav, because the technology is moving so fast, whether you are coming up with some option, some solution, it should be very fast deployable, and adaptability should be very fast, and agility should be there to do any changes. Because today the things are moving so fast, your technology and your speed of generating the I can say the products, it should be faster. So that is another requirement which is coming and which is must and mandatory for our 5G journey. And there, what exactly the agility of the any country like India and other few countries are there is play a big role. Because in India, I think I'm using the simple word in Hindi is like kind of jugaad type of things, right? But it's need of the hour. Now it's not a kind of thing which is not going to work. The way things are changing. So these all the things are there, from the technology to your speed to your ways of working should be changed as per the requirement. And today the operator like Ericsson and even the Nokia and all, they have the good solutions, and like other Intel and lot many kind of operators are there. R&D coming, HSPL, everything is coming, right? They have all the options. They have all the kind of things available in a different terms. Only thing is that to make it more I can say easy availability and faster deployability. So these two things are need of the hour, and hope everybody is working in that direction and supporting. And India has a fine edge to kind of use your agility kind of ways of working and mentality to comply these requirements in the market. So that's very quick from my side and very, very critical. And thanks to adding this point, Professor Brijesh, in this panel. I think this is very important.
Thank you so much. Thank you for those points, Gaurav. Like he's already pointed out, this. Rakesh. Thank you for pointing out that this is extremely, extremely critical, but it's also very, very sticky. The industry would want all the spectrum that can be possibly made available, be made available, and it should be made available in an easy to use manner. However, there are issues. It isn't that the government likes making it difficult for people. It is just that there are reasons for it happening the way it does. So Pamela ma'am or Mr. Mittal, would you want to comment on the other side of the picture?
I can very quickly, give a little higher level perspective on this and then pass it on to Mr. Mittal. He's really the expert on the government policy and spectrum related issues and all the work that is happening within TSDSI on this also. But just talking about it, stepping back, a few feet here and looking at it, the sticky issue, as you said. So as we have seen the deployment of 2G, 3G, 4G in India or telecom, we have always been late adapters of technology so far, right? So it has always been that technology has been proven and deployed in other parts of the world. Now let's try to make it work in India. Let's try to force fit it to India's requirements and make it work. And when we try to do that, it takes us a journey, what I call the lying down hockey stick. We start early deployments at where, it doesn't really suit India. And then suddenly it picks up like exponential, because there is a huge hunger for technology in this country. The role that technology is playing in the development, in our trajectory on development is so, and that's when the policy and the requirements and the adoption of technology like dual SIM happening, or, so there are fundamental changes that happen, the 1,000 rupee cell phone happening. There are fundamental changes that happen between the vendors and the operators and understanding India's requirements, customizing things to that. And then the hockey stick happens, the lying down hockey stick. What 5G is demanding is that we make this a standing up hockey stick. In the early stages of technology, to meet the latent need in this country. And that requires the technology providers to understand that the same way that proof of concepts trials are happening in rest of the world, they need to happen at an even larger scale because of the complexities of this geography and the complexity of the demography of India, right? Today, we are the largest consumer of data. Per capita data consumption in this country is huge, right? Because the final dynamics of policy, of affordability, of how the deployment should happen, the cost of the cell phone, everything came together. Then only the consumption picked up. Same thing is going to happen with 5G. If we are not coming together to do deployment, trials and proof of concepts, and government is making that available, right? We need to come with an even bigger force. The Ericssons, the Nokias, the Reliance Jios, the Airtels, and with using a platform like TSDSI and bringing the verticals. Today we have Smart Grid Mission, Police Wireless, Ministry of Information Broadcasting, Prasar Bharati, all of them coming to TSDSI, automotive, Tata Motors, Maruti Suzuki coming to us and saying, we want to engage with the telecom technology providers and do trials in this country to understand how to deploy 5G. Okay. So unless we get into that mode, okay, and do massive amounts of trials in this country, you will not be able to, it will become a slow journey, right? It will take us another 5-10 years to understand how to deploy 5G, and then only it will pick up. And somebody else may come and take it. There may be another Reliance Jio who will come and figure it out better than what. Okay, so I think we need to open up our mind to this, and I'm leaving it to Mr. Mittal to take the conversation.
Mr. Mittal, please, your words.
Thank you, Pamela, for setting the thanks for this, and all the speakers who have brought out very succinctly the requirements and the challenges in the network deployments. So now all of us know that spectrum is the key to all what we are talking about. The spectrum is the key to the network being created, the devices being created, etc. So I cannot speak on behalf of government, but seeing the government as they work and what has happened over the last 2-3 years, I can briefly describe that. You all know that, and then we build up on what is happening. So as we know that the speed with which the government anticipated that 5G is going to be a game changer for India, the HLF, the high-level forum for 5G, which was created with experts from all kind of stakeholders to work on various aspects of adoption of 5G and what was required to be done. So that 5G HLF was created, and on the spectrum front, immediately after that, you would see that somewhere in 2019, probably in July 19 itself, 2 major steps were taken. One was that to relax the policy and make it more user-friendly for grant of spectrum for experimental purposes, because R&D is most important part of this work, new technology, and if you want to do something in India, use new indigenous technology, indigenous products, so you need a spectrum on experimental basis. So policy was there since long, but was probably not so user-friendly. So the result of HLF was that there was a big push and a user-friendly policy was brought out. People may have still points, there may be still shortcomings, but there was a major step. Another was that a huge amount of spectrum was delicensed in different bands, including in 5 gigahertz, or which will, unlicensed spectrum, all of us know that it gives flips to a lot of various kinds of business activities. These 2 things happened. And then the recent one, about 6 to 8 months back, the WPC started the work on spectrum roadmap for next 10 years. So government is actually aware and is willing to go a step ahead to see that how we plan our spectrum in such a way that it can be timely delivered to the industry or the users. So the roadmap, I am not sure whether it has been finally released, but it gave a lot of interest, generated a lot of interest in the stakeholders. All people gave their points. And the summary, which I understand, which is available with the government or WPC, is all for low bands, mid bands, and higher bands, that how these different bands should be used. And the applications which have been emphasized, which are coming up more in the 5G perspective, are, for example, the broadcast and mobile convergence to deliver direct to mobile broadcast services. Another is the C2VX, cellular V2X services, then UAV. So these 3 segments and other emerging technologies and the applications which are seen in 5G, they have been emphasized that we need a spectrum for them. And an important part is that whatever spectrum bands you consider, it is better and advisable to go by what WRC is doing on different bands. Follow that, but don't limit to that. Look for new bands and be, if not ahead of the world, but be in the world that what different applications are being thought of and what spectrum bands will be required. So even TSDSI gave a submission to WPC, where the stakeholders, all the members of TSDSI were involved, and they gave a detailed presentation that how different frequency bands will be needed for different applications. And one major input has been given that there are a number of bands which are primary basis, which are for mobile services. So there is a possibility that those could be upgraded for IMT or maybe made primary for IMT, because we are not limiting ourselves to only 5G. The world has started moving to future technology trends towards IMT 2030. And even in TSDSI, there is a study going on for technology trends and vision for technologies for 2030 and beyond, their applications and what kind of technology will be required. And one of the bands which has become one of the range of bands which has been seen as important is terahertz communications, because various applications which will come in will need terahertz applications, terahertz frequency bands. So there's a very initial stages. A study has been suggested by one of the members, and that will be taken up. Now, the frequency bands which are really important in the mid bands, and which WRC is also agreed to conduct a study, and WRC 23 will take a decision, is 6 gigahertz band, 5.8 or 5.9 to 7.125, which is used by satellite communication very widely. So there are contentions, there are stakes involved. So coexistence studies are going on world over, and TSDSI is also doing a study on these bands to see how this can coexist with the satellite band if we use for IMT. Another important application is for in the high bands, 24.5, 25 and above, and E and V bands. There is a lot of interest for two reasons. That the high bands in the range of 24, 26, and 28 gigahertz, they are very useful for citywide hotspots with high capacity services, and the same bands can be used for backhaul also. So there is an integrated access and backhaul technology which has been developed. So these bands are required to be given more focus so that they can be released, and other applications in these bands, how they can coexist, or bands can be reharmonized in such a way that these are made available. Because in 5G, what will be limited, you may have a lot of spectrum for access, but backhaul is the one which is most important. And our sites are still not, the connectivity on fiber is not up to the scale. So we need these high and higher frequency bands to have capacity, and if they can be clubbed with the access also, then it makes best use. So there are different considerations for different frequency bands, whether they are lower side of high bands, 24, etc., or higher side E bands and V bands. But there are certain things which government has been thinking for a lot of time, and there are contending policy issues as well as the users in those bands which are already there. So they have to be resolved. And one thing we need to consider for India's specific case, and maybe applicable for various countries, is that apart from lower bands, higher bands were never in contention 15 years back, or till say 20 years back. They were lying idle, and if somebody wanted to use, so without giving any consideration, bands were allotted. Okay, you take it and use it. So now this has created incumbencies in different bands. And the real job on the policy shown spectrum is how to harmonize, how to shift the people to different bands if it is possible, or how to coexist. So this is where I think the government is really, as I know, I interact with the government circles, they are really serious about it. But as Professor Lal also said, it takes time as it takes. So, but the speed has really gone up. The consideration and the urgency has been there in the mind. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So that's very heartening to note, because what used to happen in previous generations of deployments was a policy maker's nightmare. Like Pamela ma'am said, late adopters force fit the alien tech, and this is for a consumer base which is hungry for technology. It was really a policy maker's nightmare. And while you were struggling to do the firefighting, the next generation technology is knocking on your doorstep. So, but now it is really good to know that government has taken a note of a lot of these issues and is working on many of them parallelly. So that should indeed be very heartening for the industry participants here to hear, and of course amongst the audience as well. Now let us move on to the opportunities that exist. So spectrum will get resolved hopefully sooner rather than later, but there are also other issues that will make 5G a success in India, or just another technology. So now let us spend some time on understanding the India perspective vis-a-vis 5G. So I'd like to start with Gaurav, and I want him to know where we are vis-a-vis 5G and what is the identified plan that the industry has in mind. So what is it that we are targeting, and what are we expecting from 5G as we stand today, Gaurav?
Okay, so thanks, Professor. So see, the 2-3 things, Professor, there are 2-3 dimensions that I want to bring in from the 5G perspective. See, one thing that we see, because the IT or information technology has been a long-standing run in India, more than 25 years into it. So what we know, we have been a software powerhouse. So that's been a great advantage we have. The other part that we are saying is we are looking at, industry is looking at interdisciplinary research to happen. As Pamela ma'am and Mr. Mittal also pointed out, Maruti is ready to come to TSDSI and look for a platform to do the POCs and trials. So that is one. So that is where, I would expect that somebody, at least from the industry side, be it Nokia or Ericsson, or be it, Tata Communication and others, or Reliance, that we should be investing in, because some of the POCs and some of the trials are the first to be done here in India. Second part is, once you have this kind of ecosystem or trial, then you can see, the scenario of the indigenous products coming out of India. For example, I used to follow a professor in IIT Bombay. So somewhere in 2012-13, I heard him, he was Marathi. I forgot his name, Aditya. So he was pretty much on the verge of making a router, L3 router, at a cost 1/75th of a Cisco routers. Somehow, I don't know what happened, what transpired, that professor has to abandon that effort. And this I'm talking about IIT Bombay. So eventually, what I'm saying is, both from the knowledge perspective, both from the technology perspective, capability perspective, all of it is here, Professor. All of it is here. Second, as Pamela ma'am indicated it, the ecosystem, of government being enabler of various industry, across industry segment, automotive and telecom. So that is also there. Third is somebody ready to invest in, because what we are seeing is there is a lot of focus on ROI. Prof, this is more of an Indian centric, but what we are known as in India or Asia, we are known of cutting the cost rather than investing it. We don't know where to put our money. See, today, what I see, I compare it to what I'm seeing in Canada. I'm part of one initiative from the Canadian government and Ericsson. They have built their whole, some cities network, invested it heavily, and that is only for 5G use case development. So it's in Montreal, Waterloo, some cities. Now that kind of test bed or trial network is nowhere there. So that's one investment. Second is, workforce also here, Prof. The workforce, as Pamela ma'am and Mondal indicated, they were one involved in designing ASICs chips and all that. Now, in last 25 years, what has happened, Professor, is we have become software engineers. We have not become a solution engineer or solution creator. So picking that thing, companies focusing on that. And third part is, today, Professor, I'm part of some POCs. I'll tell you, we have a team of 10 people. Some people from Germany, they are research scholars. Some people from Sweden, another one, me from India. See, 10 people from different interdisciplinary skills working together. There is no timeline for us. The timeline is like, you know, you invest in a year and then you make this POC happen. So investment, picking up the right people, investing in them, you know, make it POC work, then industrialize it and then optimize it. What we tends to be doing, Prof, is we are thinking about cost cutting measure or optimization in the first place itself. This is becoming a too much of a, you know, deal breaker for a lot of people who want to build things here in India. So unless there is a mind shift, so this is one mind shift. Second is people mindset, because people in the telecom industry in India were too focused on RAN, core, cloud. You need to have people with an architecture mindset who could span across. Third is there'll be a shift in the organization structure, in the sense that, you know, we have to get away with this feudal mindset of general manager, DGMs kind of terminology. Let's get to technologist mindset. Let people work together, because there'll be managers of tomorrow or the vice presidents of tomorrow has to manage team which are people with the data scientist background, people from AI/ML background, people from chip designing background, people from security background, and people from the networks background. So all of it has to gel together. I would say, Professor, these components are there in bits and pieces here in India, but culmination of them to a POC or indigenous thing is something that has to happen. So for that, there has to be a mindset change in the people, in the industry leaders. So, and if that happens, I'm sure that will happen. The other hope I see, Prof, is in India, we can still make a product at 1/50th or 100th cost of elsewhere. For example, I'll give you an analogy. Pamela ma'am would understand it better. In Belgium, you know, some of our Gujarati Indians, they are into the diamond cutting business, ma'am. Europeans never got into it because they thought from the sand, what can we get out of it? These people, the makers from Gujarat, Baroda, or Surat are so good that some of those businessmen are actually ruling the diamond industry in the world. And that has happened only in 15, 20 years. You know, you would have heard a story last year that, you know, one diamond businessman awarded a home and car to his employees. Yeah, so all of that, that's an ecosystem. So that's one part of the ecosystem. Another ecosystem, I would say, based on the success of PSLV and ISRO, that somewhere down the line, it was conceptualized. So let's create a, you know, institution of excellence, IISR and related institute. You picked up the raw talent from the hinterland of India. They became your, you know, aeronautics engineer, and now you have a constant supply of great engineers. And that's what you see. Lot of PSLV missions, ISRO doing great stuff. So all of that, somebody has to do it. If it is done by industry, it will be great, because then you can create your indigenous solution. You can make it a powerhouse of the knowledge base for 5G. And this is actually an opportunity, because today, Rakesh would you know, add it up better. We are not able to find we are not able to find people in Europe. We are not able to find people in India. So there are some pockets of excellence, technology people we can see in India, because we are young as a country. So this is a huge opportunity where if somebody invested right, you know, with a mindset of an R&D, because there'll be an investment, there'll be failure, the outcome will be amazing for this nation. So with that, I'll pause.
Thank you so much. That was very, very interesting. Very, very well said. So that has been put up very, very nicely. Now, I want to come to you, Subhash. Like you said in your introduction, that you've been mandated with, you know, making use of Atmanirbhar Bharat initiative and make something for India. So could you give us some insights on how you're making it happen in HFCL? That will, you know, make it easier for us to relate to how it works.
Yeah, sure, Professor Brajesh. So if I really look into India as a talent hub, India has been a supplier of raw talent to the world in the form of the outsourced business. There has been, I would say, attempts at different points in time, rather than supplying the raw material, create the finished goods. Now, when it comes to creating the finished goods, it's about the supply chain, not only in the talent, but also into the entire ecosystem. So if you really look into the ecosystem, what does really a startup culture in Silicon Valley thrive upon? It is the collaboration, coming together of the consumers, the providers, and the component providers all into a closed loop mechanism. So I guess there are multiple ingredients. So if we have to shift ourselves from technology consuming nation or the raw material supplier nation to finished goods producer, it's a huge shift into the mindset. So I will just give you an example. If I am very risk averse, what I will do, I'll pick up a job which requires skill. I'll pick up the skill and then I will excel at it. I will get a very good plum job with one of the employers who is making that finished goods. The key question is, if India has to take that risk and stand on its feet, unless there is a closed loop ecosystem of the consumer challenging you with certain constraint and say that can you make it to this specification, and there is amount of trust to make sure that happens. So I guess all these are coming together now, the policymakers, the consumers, and the equipment makers, that is meeting all together. Now specifically I will talk about what we are trying to do and some of the challenges that we are facing, right? So if you really look at, we are trying to do the disaggregated radio access network, different parts of it we are trying to make. Now, as you know that 5G is a fairly complex set of technologies coming together. To construct a wireless network, you start with the antenna, then you deal with the RF, then you get into the baseband signal processing part, then you get into layer 2, layer 3 protocols, the scheduling, for the management and orchestration, you come up with all of that. Now, what interestingly is happening is because of the abundance of IT jobs, people are very attracted towards the low entry barrier jobs rather than super specialization. So, for example, 5G is bringing multiple frequency bands, and the power amplifier in the macro case is one of the complex areas to deal with. So power amplifier design, maintaining the linearity, giving wide channel bandwidth, not a technology is natively available in India. The technology is still natively available. So the question is, how do you really go about creating it? So it essentially is also a lot of coming together of the academia and the industry to make sure that theory to practice is really possible, and the trust of an investor, whether it is HFCL's management trusting that yes, these guys will be able to do something, or some of HFCL's customer giving an assurance that they will buy it if it is made into a particular area of performance, then I think there is a going together. Otherwise, the first question will be the NRE cost. Is it justified? Why would I invest it if there is no assurance that somebody is going to buy it? So that is where the challenge comes. And then if you really look at, it also is becoming multidisciplinary. As I talked about the compute and connect together, so it is so true because of the disaggregation, the way you construct the network management, the traditional hierarchical model is breaking with the ORAN with a hybrid model of management. Now you suddenly find you need people with computer science background and the communication. Where do you find it? And I recently have hired people, and I actually am myself training them in a collaboration with the academia and some of those houses. And it's a journey. And I call the no offenses meant to Pamela, but standards is like the philosophy, the philosophers. If the philosophers are creating a recipe and there is a set of chef and there are the hungry souls waiting for the food, right? So how do you really bring this abstraction from the standard to something realizable, cook something that is delightful, and your consumers of diverse nature, somebody eating noodle, rice, roti, or whatever, you satisfy all of them. That's essentially what you have to do. So it is creating this ecosystem. It's all about those philosophers, the chefs, and the consumers who are eating the food all together, Brajesh. But I think one positive thing is there is a thriving ecosystem in India. I think we are the second largest startup hub. So I am very sure with everybody's effort and willingness, this is going to be a global hub of technology creators. Thank you.
Thank you, Subhash, for those encouraging words. So you know,
Rajesh,
smiling. Yeah.
Just to add a little bit there on that local ecosystem thing, if you allow me, just to add that, because, you know, again, till 4G era, because the open interfaces were not there, it was very difficult for an open system, you know, locally to thrive, because it was dominated by these global players who have invested billions and billions, like Nokia's, Ericsson's, and these people. But now with this open RAN coming up and the disaggregation happening, it's a very good opportunity, because now a small player can just pick up a piece. If you just want to work on the RAN, you know, RU software, it's okay. If you just want to work on the orchestration piece, it's fine. You know, if you just want to work on a RIC, real-time intelligent controller. So these opportunities were never there, which have come up now. It's just a matter of picking that up and, you know, supporting that from policy perspective as well. So just a thought there.
Yeah. Thanks for that point, because that actually eases me into the next point that I had in the discussion. I wanted to look at the role that Open RAN can potentially play in this India specific solution or India perspective to the whole 5G ecosystem. So here I would request Radhe to chime in, say a few words about what his take is on ORAN as a possible vehicle for this Indian deployments.
Thanks, Professor Brijesh. So clearly, if we look at traditional RAN, it's basically comprises of proprietary hardware and software. And Open RAN, if I talk about, it basically has done two things. Firstly, it has decoupled the hardware from software. Secondly, it opens the interfaces and make them interoperable. And now this is quite remarkable. And clearly, Open RAN has gained a lot of traction. My previous speakers just now mentioned that we can intuitively understand that it has, lowered the entry barrier for new companies in the RAN space. Now, many companies can actually focus on the subsystem level development rather than having to develop the entire RAN as a box. And what it can help in the sense is multiple companies can develop interoperable subsystem, and a system integrator can integrate them and deliver a full working solution. We can see that Open RAN has already opened a large number of opportunities for smaller companies, including Indian startups, and many companies are participating in the solution ecosystem and playing meaningful role. I would say that as we see that in earlier generation of technologies, India was playing pretty much the role of consumer of technology. But I think now with Open RAN and 5G, India will play both the roles of producer of technology as well as consumer of technology. With that, I pause.
Thank you. Those are encouraging words. Thank you so much. And thank you for keeping it short, because now it's time for another course correction vis-a-vis the time. So, so quickly, Ankur, I'd want to come to you and ask you a question regarding the return on investments. Now, we were talking about the India perspective. How do you see, well, there was already a talk of MEC being an opportunity for service providers to gain a little more revenue out of the ecosystem. How do you see the ROI aspects of this 5G and in the India perspective, please?
Yes, Professor. I mean, this whole automation journey actually helps in many aspects. Right. It fastens the deployment speed in a way. So how to configure the site, the deployment cycle. One of my colleagues actually here shared some input, like till the time you make a solution, the opportunity goes away by that time, right? So it bridges that gap. So that's a great advantage we do see. At the same time, the kind of a people required manual people required to support whole that journey can be reduced. You need to skill up a smaller set of people to take care of this whole journey. So overall, it does require some investment as a capex maybe, but as a overall solution, I'll keep it brief. We do see it as in a long term, the advantage it brings on the table.
Right. Okay. So thank you for that. And now I had wanted a few words on trials and readiness, but I'll keep that for a little while later because we'll talk about standardization in a moment. Before that, I want to take up a brief discussion on 5G use cases, and there are multiple ones of those existing. So I will go to a few panelists and get their views on what 5G use cases they think are going to become more popular than others, and which could be the differentiating use cases vis-a-vis India's growth and the growth of the telecom industry. So I'll start with Radhe and move through a few more panelists. Radhe, could you please tell us some 5G use cases from your point of view?
Sure. Thanks, Professor Brijesh. So before I share the use cases, let me put it in context that we can look at the 5G ecosystem as a three-layer stack, where the bottom layer comprises of the network, which is powered by the operators and network infra OEMs. And then the mid layer comprises of devices and applications such as 5G-enabled drones, surveillance, AR, VR, MR, XR, etc. And the top layer comprises of different segments. For example, consumer, home, enterprise, vertical industries like port, mining, electricity companies, etc. So basically, we can look at the 5G ecosystem as a platform layer plus an ecosystem layer, which is a platform plus ecosystem approach. Now, with that, I would say that multiple stakeholders in this particular ecosystem need to come together to drive the use cases. Specifically answering to your question, what are the key use cases that will be relevant to India market scenario? I think in the beginning, Prasanna talked about a couple of use cases, fixed wireless access for sure, to enable home and enterprise broadband. Then, of course, cloud-based services in a COVID-19 type of scenario, and even post scenario, which is the so-called new normal, to enable work from home, skill development, entertainment, etc. But some of the revolutionary use cases would include, for example, drone-based aerial survey, inspection, surveillance, agriculture in terms of pesticide spraying in agriculture, etc. For sure, telemedicine. I think remote surgery could be a little far-fetched, but telemedicine, including remote diagnostics, etc., definitely can be a quick reality, and it can improve the efficiency and access to medication. Then in terms of work efficiency, it could be assisted reality, for example, for improved service productivity using applications such as smart helmet. Other use cases, very important, could be Industry 4.0 or industry automation use cases for increasing the economic output. Then we have the smart grid use cases for reducing electricity wastage and reducing the energy cost. And I think the list goes on. We also can think about a number of use cases pertaining to smart city, safe city, etc. So I strongly believe that there are a long tail of very useful applications that 5G will bring, and they will basically accelerate India's digital journey. With that, I pause.
Thank you, Radhe. So as is clear, this is a very, very long list, and it is long-tailed and heavy-tailed. So there is a lot of a large number of use cases to consider. So I will request the other panelists who I call to mention a couple of use cases which they think are sort of game changers or more important than others. So Ankur, the couple of 5G use cases of your choice. So this is your personal choice.
Yeah, definitely. I like to. Before that, I would like to mention a couple of lines about, in general, the take on 5G from at least in personal from my side is that we are not fixing the use case and then driving the 5G journey. We are thinking in a way, we are having a 5G network which can onboard the use case as and when it comes.
Right, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So on those notes, definitely the first use case is going to be eMBB. I mean, we don't see a kind of a doubt on that perspective, right? So at the same time, I think Radhe summarized it very well, but I'd like to reiterate from my side is private network and use cases based on the network slicing, where we are kind of giving a differentiated service to different customers based on their subscription of the different slice. So those can be the immediate things which we think can be used, but definitely other use cases regarding drone, regarding surveillance, regarding security, regarding all the use cases regarding agriculture, they are also down there in the list, definitely.
Yeah, thank you for that list, Ankur. So as you can see, the list is quite long. And this question I wanted to make a little less technical and little more personal. Like, as a user, for a minute, let's forget that, we've been working in this area and we want to make a contribution. From a user's perspective, at home or at work or on way to work, what are the 2 use cases that you really are looking forward to, you think that 5G will enable? So that is what I'm expecting from the rest of the people I go to. So please stick to that, because the list is, I agree, long. And there are a lot of interesting use cases. But as a person, so Rahul, what are the 2 use cases that mean the most to you?
So I'll talk about 2 use cases. One is more from a consumer perspective. I think this holography and these remote presence. So we already have, right? We are all doing this remotely and it's working very well. But 5G gives you an opportunity to make it more real. There will be holographic stuff which you can do and make it more interesting for the users and couple it with the AR, VR and those things. So I think these will be very interesting for the users to get for. The second use case, which I think we didn't touch upon, is the IoT use case. Again, it's not too much for the user, more for the industry. But especially in the developed world, the operators in these countries, they're very interested in these IoT use cases, because that gives them the ability to do the automation, because they can reduce their manpower requirements in the factories. Plus, also countries like Australia, where it's very wide and mines in the middle of desert and all those places. So they want to put tags, RFID tags, and all these things to enable their operations as efficiently as possible. I'm sure India again, it's labor intensive, but there are applications of IoT definitely for India as well. So these are the 2 things which I think important for 5G as well.
Thank you, Rahul. So Ajay, what is it that you want 5G to enable sooner rather than later?
Yep. I think a lot of these have been covered, but one thing maybe I would want to highlight is, I'm passionate about this. I think we've done some work around this. It's basically at the cusp of combining AI and 5G, because then you can bring a lot of this continuum of compute together. So transportation is a vertical, around how can we use AI and the connectivity and the huge amount of data that we can use to make decisions for road safety, for driver awareness. It creates commercial benefits, it creates societal benefits. Like, India has almost 17 deaths an hour. So, reducing those fatalities, I think, is going to be a big area if we can bring some of these connectivity and 5G and AI use cases together. So that I think is one that I definitely want to do. Second is, we did touch upon a little bit, but this whole visual analytics or being able to do some of these analysis using 5G and video. I think India is setting up a lot of manufacturing capability. We can leapfrog and really start setting up smart factories today itself. And 5G, private 5G, and some of these use cases will actually play a very large role. So I would like to see how we can, just like we've leapfrogged in mobile, we leapfrogged in digital wallets. I think with this, we can leapfrog to really become a leader in manufacturing. So we should think about it. And that's something that I would really like to see.
And thank you for that, Ajay. Ideally, I would have wanted to go through the rest of the panel as well, but we're really short of time now. So we'll have to move on to the next topic, which is standardization and Pamela ma'am and Mr. Mittal. So you'll have to do a lot of talking for the next 10 odd minutes. Walk us through a few things, specifically 5GI. It has gained a lot of interest. And while you're at it, you could also tell us a bit about the field trials, because I skipped that earlier. So could you please, talk us through the 5GI thing that India has made happen and the field trials that happened recently?
So let me start with the 5GI journey. And so I think some of our members, even from pre-TSDSI days, had been trying to put some innovations which they had done for enabling rural communication in cellular, making it more robust and more accessible given the demography of our villages. And they were not being very successful, right? So way back in 2017 or 20, we were sitting in ITU, and this proposal, so-called low mobility large cell, which was on the table from TSDSI members, and the discussion was happening on rural broadband, the rural broadband use cases in the IMT 2020 specifications. The scenarios, the test scenarios there, which were mentioned, were 500 kilometer per hour bullet trains going through the villages. So ensuring 5G connectivity in bullet trains as they go through the villages. This was from China. There were the other use cases from America and Europe talking about 125 kilometer per hour expressways. So high-speed vehicles and expressways going through the rural areas and ensuring, no degradation in 5G connectivity to people sitting in these high-speed vehicles. So we sitting there said 70% of our population is living in villages. We don't have bullet trains, we don't have expressways. We have people who need broadband connectivity, even at lower mobility, right? Even at 30 kilometers per hour or lesser, we want to give them 5G experience. Okay, and that is what started the whole 5GI journey. Okay, so what eventually has happened, we were able to get that as a use case within the performance requirements of IMT 2020. Then the next thing was, what is the technology for this? The technology specifications which were developed, the technology, the innovation that has been developed to enable a base station in every Gram Panchayat, and then 5G quality connectivity across the village, every nook and cranny in the village, right? That technology specifications were to be incorporated into this specification of 5G. Now in 3GPP, the voice of our proponents was not very strong. So it was always deprioritized. Given the dynamics of 3GPP, it was always given a lower priority, and it was always removed from the priority list to be involved in release, to be made part of release 14 or release 15 or release 16. Every time it fell off the list, right? So what did we do? We went and discussed with the experts in ITU and 3GPP, and using their advice, we took the 3GPP specifications, which TSDSI is also an owner of, joint ownership along with other partners, and enhanced that. So while 3GPP would prioritize these innovations to make it part of the mainstream specification from 3GPP, we took the 3GPP specific, our proponents in TSDSI took the 3GPP specification, added into it the enhancements that would make 5GI possible, and submitted it to ITU as an alternative specification, which, Europe has submitted HCDEC, China has submitted another spec called NewFront. So there were 8 different specifications. This was the one from TSDSI. So alongside 3GPP, which TSDSI also submitted, the 5GI was also submitted, and both of those qualified. Okay. Now all that is pending is that 3GPP should prioritize these enhancements and merge them into 3GPP, so that the TSDSI 5GI can also be merged into the 3GPP 5G in its next revision at ITU. That's all that is pending. So it's no big deal really. Okay. And we are just waiting our line at a turn in the queue at 3GPP for this convergence to happen. So that's the journey, and this is a big learning for us in how standards work, right? So there's something similar here we are doing in cloud computing, where ISO is doing something, IEEE is doing something. So how do you understand the standards landscape, and how do you understand the needs and requirements that are there, or the innovations that are coming from our geography, and finding a rightful place for them in this entire ecosystem, right? So that is essentially the learning here. And maybe Mr. Mittal can talk about what is happening in 6G. Recently, we've made some 6G submissions from TSDSI. Mr. Mittal can enhance that. And yeah.
Right, ma'am. Before we move on to 6G and get his inputs, there are a couple of questions related to 5GI. One is relatively easy, which is, how can we explain 5GI in simple terms for a layman? If somebody who's not very technically inclined, what does 5GI mean for him? And the second is, there has been some resistance to adoption of 5GI. So, ma'am, if you could briefly talk about that aspect as well.
In layman terms, it is enabling that the inter-site distance. So base stations today by default is what last mile. Last mile is what 1.75 kilometers, right? It's equal to a mile. So they say base stations should be 1 mile apart, and all technology is developed by default assuming they should be 1 mile apart. And then as they go to 500 kilometers per hour, they try to bring the base stations closer and closer together. What 5GI is doing, it is saying in our villages, our gram panchayats are put 10 to 12 kilometers apart. So we need base stations at a distance of 10 to 12 kilometers and the same throughput between them, even though mobility speeds can be compromised. So they've developed a technology which will enable that with the same kind of power levels which are regulated by the government. Okay, but only the distance is being enhanced. The mobility speeds are being decreased to enable that 100 megabit per second connectivity at 12 kilometers per hour. So that's the technology. So it's an introduction of a new waveform. If you look at the numerology of 5G, there are so many different combinations of waveforms available, right? This is just one perturbation of all the modulation schemes that they have added one more modulation scheme. And that is what 5GI primarily is. Coupled with that, there are a few other minor enhancements which further make higher performance, more robustness for the kind of deployments we need in India, both urban and rural, is what 5GI is all about. Maybe less than 5%. The enhancements are maybe less than 5% of what 3GPP 5G is. Now the challenges for the resistance. The resistance is a bit of a mystery to us. We struggle with that. At a technical level, we have tried to enable a lot of dialogue and discussion within TSDSI to resolve any technical issues. And till now, no major technical issue has bubbled up in our study group meetings, in the discussions within TSDSI. There is no technical blocker to the adoption of this. By putting it into the specifications, by some optional acceptance within 3G, all of that has proven that there is no really technical issue that is a blocker. Okay, but there are some other considerations that are probably the reasons for the resistance. So it's kind of outside TSDSI, the reasons for the resistance.
So that we leave for another panel, ma'am. So, right. So moving on to Mr. Mittal. So the question is about 6G, IMT 2030 and how India has already started contributing. But while you take that question, could you also please mention that what are the challenges that countries like India faced till this point in time? Some of them, those we've overcome. So if you could bring those out, and what are the challenges that still remain in India and countries from Africa becoming significant contributors to standards? So if you could take it like that, please.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Lal. So in fact, this question is something which about the way why India and Africa, they are behind and what challenges they face. I think the first thing is that there is already a set of, or a group of stakeholders who are involved in standardization. They have their foot completely inside.
Okay.
And right, so to allow any new person to be a part of that group, so there is always a resistance. So what I personally feel and what we have seen in going to 3GPP and ITOR, especially with reference to 5GI, our experience really stems more from there, is that the first reaction is how a new person who was nowhere has suddenly come and has come with innovation, which can have a real value and can threaten. So, and we understand that some of these big majors who are now part of the 3GPP ecosystem or ITOR system, they were also dealt similarly when they came first there. So I think though the standard is a collaborative approach, but in that collaboration, a lot of other interests and other stakes they play. And so that is where the resistance is felt. Number two is that India and if you mentioned Africa, we have been consumer of technologies. So to become a power in the standards world, it is also important that we have our own R&D, strong R&D, and a manufacturing base. Of course, it may be a vicious circle, but somewhere that circle has to be, broken or maybe broken, and we have to make an entrance in such a way that we can drive power into that system and make our entry. So right now our position is that we have put our foot in the door. We are slightly inside the door with a small, variation in the 5G and making it a 5GI, but it has opened up a lot of opportunities for India and also similarly placed countries elsewhere, including Africa, that there is a way for us to find our place in the standards world. And we have to work on multifarious, policy issues and other aspects, and we can make our way. This has been indicated by our successes in 5GI. Thank you.
Thank you. And follow-up question. So what happens is, like you said, we've been consumers for a very, very long time. And we are no ordinary consumers. We represent such a large population. So we are a reasonably large consumer base. And a lot of times, offerings are driven by the consumer rather than the manufacturer, because he won't be able to sell something that nobody is willing to buy. So despite being such a big consumer in terms of volume, why is it that we've not been influential?
Yeah, I think when you say that we are consumers, that we have been silent consumers. Whatever has come, we consume because it offered always new. We went from 2G to 3G, 3G to 4G. So we got always some improvement over what we were doing. So probably we were happy with that. But now yes, please.
And also, Mr. Mittal, do you think that we're also an uninformed user base?
Yes, to some extent. To some extent, that we were happy with what was being offered, and we didn't know that what else can be done because we were not
offered, right? Because
we were not into technology contributor field, so we actually did not know that how much we can do. And even if we knew, there was not enough, weight created around that.
Correct.
That we can actually contribute. There have been contributions, bits and bits, but not enough, to create a critical mass, so that the ecosystem actually becomes full weight.
Yeah, because I think being informed is a very important step in being influential, because you can make demands only if you know what you need and what you can have. So that is, I think, the primary reason, despite being such a large volume, a large, percentage of our population is not as well informed as it might have been. And maybe that has been playing a role. But now, if government represents them and represents them strongly and takes the case forward, maybe people will hear more from us. Thank you very much for that, Mr. Mittal. Now, a few words on another very, very interesting and important aspect of any new wireless technology deployment. And that is that radiations will cause a lot of harm. They are harmful for humans and they should be done away with. So Prasanna, I spoke to him earlier and he had kindly agreed to say make a few statements about this. So could you please educate us on the implications of 5G vis-a-vis its harmful effects? Are they a myth, or is there any substance in them?
Sure, Professor. I think the first of all, what we need to understand is the impact of radiation on any living organism. It depends on the amount of radiated energy the body can absorb. Now, if we read the specifications of any RF device, so there is something called SAR, the specific absorption rate. So this defines the amount of radiation the device can emit. And there are regulatory authorities or regulatory bodies, so which puts a limit on the allowed value of SAR. So there we could be safely assured that the radiation from these devices, the electronic devices, are safe, and they are made sure safe by these regulatory authorities and the limitations. So now coming to 5G, there are certain inbuilt techniques in 5G that avoids what we can say unnecessary radiation. So if you look at the NR, the 5G new radio, it supports beam steering and narrow beam formation. So thereby the directing the transmission towards a device only when it is needed. Okay, and then if you look at again on the IMT 2020 standards, it demands that the devices have to be 100 times energy efficient compared to 4G. Energy efficient means it has to be less power consuming, and less power consuming means it has. There are these inbuilt techniques in 5G which avoids unnecessary radiation. So now there is another debate that is happening in the mmWave band of 5G, where it is 24 gigahertz and beyond, the high frequency band. So where it is a shorter wavelength. But what we can note is that, so if you just look at the GSA report of 2021, there are more than 100 mmWave licenses already granted in the world, and around 27 such mmWave band networks are already active in the world. If you take even the USA, the operators like AT&T, T-Mobile, and Verizon, they already have live mmWave band networks, and there is no information, there is no evidence of any such harmful impact of radiation caused by 5G. And again, to summarize, there are regulatory authorities which limit the safe or allowed amount of radiation. Thus, we can be assured that we feel safe, and 5G is safe, and 5G is here to stay. Thank you, Professor.
Thank you so much. Thank you for bringing that perspective. I think it is important. Any discussion on 5G is incomplete without bringing these facts out. So 5G has been very careful in reducing the transmit powers, keeping it to the minimum by reducing interference, by better use of technology, and so are the regulatory bodies. They are also extremely careful about not overdoing it. So I guess we are in good hands, and we should try to make the best use of what 5G has to offer, and not worry too much about the ill effects that it might have. These thought about ill effects that it might have. Now, the final topic that I wanted to talk about was the skills. Now, what has happened is we've actually run out of time. So what I'll do now is that I'll go through the entire panel, and I'll request all the panelists to individually, when they're making their closing statement, they should also make a couple of statements about two things with respect to skill. One is, what is their opinion of the skill availability in India? And the second is there a way that we can leverage some of the skill set that is available outside, not necessarily technological, managerial? There was something very interesting that Gaurav said, that we focus on cost cutting rather than investing. So that is an issue that is related to management and planning rather than technology. So is there an opportunity for us to leverage global talent that might be available globally, maybe not in India, to circumvent this issue. So now I will go through the entire list of panelists in the order that they appear in front of me on the screen. So 3 things, please. One is the state of skill set in India. Can we leverage the global talent that's available and might be willing to move to India? And finally, their closing statement on this panel. All right, so we'll start with the first thing that appears is Pamela, ma'am, you go first, please.
So I would talk about standardization capability. Okay.
All right.
Given that this whole journey, standards is a very important role to play. And, our presence there has been very sporadic, and only now we are putting our foot into it. So I would say overall, the standardization capability in the country is weak, right? We may be developing the research capability, and so being able to participate effectively in standardization and making an impact there, and it requires both soft skills and hard skills to be able to be successful in standardization. Okay, and there's a huge experiential element to it, right? You learn only by experiencing. You may have developed the greatest innovation, or you may be the fastest runner, but for you to go and win an Olympics medal, right, there are a lot of other things. You need all those coaches, so to say, right, and a lot of other infrastructure to coach you and train you to be able to succeed there. So similar is the thing of standardization. So what we are trying to drive is, we have actually coined this thing called standards-driven research, and we are trying to create, at least amongst our research community, an excitement of standardization, wherein they should participate. We have also taken up an initiative to provide access to all the standards development at ITU, 3GPP, and 1M2M to reduce the barriers of when now it is all virtual. So we want all our members to come, and we've made it possible for them to participate in all these global meetings, to be there, to experience what it takes to develop, to take some innovation, some ideas, our requirements, and incorporate them into standards, or even understand where the global direction of technology is. What are all the big global players driving technology in which direction, so that if they want to become party to it, what should they be doing? What should they be thinking, right? So that's where I would say that it's very important to build skills for standardization, participation in the country, and a lot of it is experiential, and we would be very happy to partner with any platform to enable building of that skill set.
And your closing statement about the panel?
Well, I would say that, we are at the cusp of the next Y2K opportunity for India with 5G, and, they talk about IoT. So, with this deployment of new technologies into all verticals, I think India has a huge opportunity to become not only a consumer of technology in order to leapfrog into the next phase of development, but also as a provider of technology and solutions, a provider of solutions with the new technology, which will be important not only for India, but also for the rest of the developing economies. So we should grab this opportunity.
Thank you, ma'am. So next on my list is Rahul. Over to you, Rahul.
Yeah, so first I'll touch upon this tapping on the global talent. I think, with this COVID-19 and the remote work that we have seen, that I think that makes that part quite easy to tap the global talent now. It practically doesn't matter where you are these days, and a lot of companies are actually saying you can 100% work remote. So I don't even remember when last time I went to office. So, and if this was not happening virtual, I'm sitting in Singapore, but doesn't matter, right? You can tap anywhere, any part of the world. So that's a great thing which has happened, which should just accelerate this tapping of global talent for India. Secondly, in terms of opportunities, as we discussed with this softwarization of the networks and disaggregation of hardware, software that we discussed, and India being the IT hub, I think there's a unique opportunity right now to tap on these things, because there are a lot of pockets in this 5G which are created, which were never there before. So it's excellent opportunity. We just have to tap on it. Closing remarks, it's been wonderful. I think Pamela ma'am, listening to you for the government perspective, which is normally quite missing. All the industry experts, excellent experience. Brijesh, thanks for putting it together. Avinash, thanks.
Thank you. So next on the list is Rakesh. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Professor Brajesh. And I think I will just start what Pamela madam remind us as a Y2K, and it was very close to us. And to be very frank, the 5G space is moving, and all the panelists spoke about, right? 5G is kind of more driven the software wise, right? Everything is like MPVN is going to SDN, like all IP things are moving on SDN. Then other open things are coming over, and also so less dependency on the proprietary things, more open on a software. And that was the software powerhouse as India was the big success for during the Y2K. And the same thing today, and my personal view, and hopefully everybody will agree, there's no better opportunity than any time now, right? It's the best opportunity for Indian skills to utilize and make it as a world leader for sure, because software, everything is software in the 5G. Now, so that's about the opportunity and the chances which we should get it, because we create one of the best brains in the world, and they go out and perform the best and kind of growing the things. We have several examples we learned from the WhatsApp University and all, but I don't know how true is that percentage are there, but definitely being a NASA, any big things are coming. We see that most of the Indian brains are there or working there, right? So there is no kind of lack of skill in India to comply and fulfill the 5G requirement. So that's the first thing and foremost thing, right? And we should be very positive about it. And we are seeing in the ground when we hire near about like 3,000, 4,000 people in a year, or maybe handling by 8,000 people in globally, right? So I personally know that how well India placed with respect to skill availability to see the future challenges. So I am very confident, and just to let this panel know, and most of the people know, right? Now, second thing is that other part is that what are the things are there which we need to see? As few panelists already mentioned, our end-to-end solutioning skill, that is very important. That is still lagging in India. It's coming slowly from last at least 5-6 years. I'm seeing the big trend, big solution architects and the product architects are available in India who's supporting outside globally. And as one panelist just now tell that this virtual working is enable us a lot to pull out the more talent in India and wherever they are. So that's one part. So from the architecture perspective, and second thing is that in our government has taken a big kind of step to move towards the hardware designing and the chip manufacturing. I think these two things, if we are able to do it, then I don't want to name it particular country or something, but that's our combination of having the good kind of hardware design and chip designing, and we already the good software powerhouse available and the talent is available. This is going to make a very clear combination in order to make from the skill perspective as well as leading the 5G in the world. So that's very quick note from my side, and I was really delighted to hear from all the panelists and all kind of, and it's great honor for me to be part of that. So thanks Professor Brajesh and Avinash to arranging this, and thanks a lot from my side.
Thank you, Rakesh. Next we have Mr. Mittal.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Lal. So as the previous speakers have said that skill, there is no issue, and as far as India original people availability, we are getting new students coming out of our renowned colleges, and we have a lot of strength in academia. The question is that to consume them into our ecosystem of manufacturing and service provision and product development. So that ecosystem And this is again a vicious circle that people come out, then you have an enterprise which is coming up and taking up production or creation of some new products and services. And so I think that is really picking up. And soon we are going to see that there will be an explosion in this activity. And as we know that because of ORAN and similar other open initiatives, as the products become less, less customized and give more opportunity to customize them, it throws open a lot of opportunities for, a lot of organizations to do their own products, customize them to the consumer requirement and make a vibrant industry. So that is how I think skill sets available and they will be multiplied. And the key thing is that pandemic or no pandemic from now, the virtual world, the virtual dependence on talent or virtual exchange of information and any other thing is becoming a norm now. Earlier, what was required to be done as face-to-face, that has now changed forever. So I think drawing the skill from abroad is easier now, but there is no lack of talent in India. It needs to be just built up and consumed in the relevant industry. And as far as, if we are coming back to my pet topic of a spectrum, which is the key thing for the technology to actually really expand and take shape and take care of the future technologies to come, applications to come, is that this is I think one of the most neglected areas in the country, that to do the spectrum studies and come out with solutions and how to actually work the spectrum among different users. So there, I think the government intervention is something which may be required, that government may lead this effort. Because whatever somebody studies may do, ultimately it's the government who has to allot a spectrum or accept those studies. So there, I think there is something required to be done. There are efforts, but maybe they are more scattered. And TSDSI provides a platform where everybody can come together. Government is already a member, DOT is a member, and all stakeholders are members. So initiation has been done with 6 GHz studies, and probably many more will happen to showcase the industrial collaboration. And as far as the summary of what we discussed today and what we look forward is that we are, on the cusp of, taking a big jump, big stride into the international world of technology, be it contribution to standards, be it manufacturing, be it service provision and management, technology management. So this opportunity should not be lost. Everybody should come together and contribute. And the talks which were given by different panelists here, they're very encouraging. And probably we are in for a very bright future in this area for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mittal. Ajay.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so on the skill side, I think I would kind of call out a few areas to work on. One is the architecture piece of it. Like, I think it got called out. We have to be also getting good at deciding what to invest in. I mean, it's about can we groom and nurture a horse versus just deciding which horse to ride. We've been very good at picking which are the winning technologies and invest them, but it's about us making that call early and building those things. So I think I would say that would be an important thing from a skills perspective. Now, technically, this can boil down to we need to know more beamforming. We need to do some of those more complex things ahead of time. But I think that attitude, that mindset is what I would say we need to fix. Getting the global talent. I mean, I think we can get global talent because, I mean, I remember one person, a mentor had told me that, for problem solvers, we are the best opportunity. So, people would like to come and work if we can kind of, shape it or structure it in a certain manner. But we would also want to see that, when we bring external talent out to work on those problems, it's not just to solve it, but can we bring our capabilities up? So next time around, we can do that thing ourselves. So I think we have to have that mindset when we look at global talent solving our problems. So look at it from capability building. I think from a conclusion standpoint, I think 5G is definitely going to unlock a vast range of opportunities. It spans across spectrums like manufacturing, education. You see some data points, PwC says 13 trillion of global economic value, multiple jobs. I think from my mindset, it's actually a decathlon, not a not a unidimensional kind of a event for us. We already know that we'll have to build multiple capabilities, multiple areas where we have to invest to do things. There are things that we already know. We, as a country, we know how to operate at scale, how to drive operations, how to get really efficient in doing those. But there are things that are going to be new that we have to evolve. There's going to be a lot of work to be done around building software and hardware, innovating, investing around AI business models. So I think this would require us to basically work in many different ways. We have an opportunity to create really an open and a diverse ecosystem across OEMs, telecom providers, cloud providers, startups, entrepreneurs, to work collaboratively towards accelerating the deployment of 5G across the country. It's been a pleasure to kind of talk to this panel. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ajay. Next, we have Ankur. Your remarks, please.
Thank you, Professor. I mean, I second the opinion, whatever fellow panelists said, right? India has got the talent. There's no doubt about it. Only thing is that the best of us should be with us. That's more important, right? Best of us had, I mean, they have been, we should create an environment where they create value for themselves and create value for us as well, right? So as I think Dr. Mittal said, we have put our foot at the doorstep at all the directions, right? It is from the standards, we initiated the journey, similarly for the development and other skill set. It is just start of the journey. That motivation, the momentum should not go. I'll be very open and frank that we are not there right now. The journey has just started. So the momentum should not go, but I do see a great possibility and great hope that there is no reason that we cannot reach there. So coming to the concluding remarks, that it was really an honor to discuss a candid opinion, taking the candid opinion with all the panelists. And it was really an honor to be part of this discussion. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ankur. Next, the next name I have on the list is Gaurav. Gaurav, your remarks, please.
I think I will just sum up what everyone has said, Professor. So program management is one skill that we have to be building in India, and program management not only for the cost effectiveness or ROI effectiveness, but more for the capability and skill building. We have the ingredients. So we need program management. Second is in the skill is the tenacity. People have been taking jobs or role and keep switching. That's what we see. You spend 2 years there, 2 years there, 2 years here. So we need tenacity in the people's career, more from the fact that you start working on RF, you keep building on. Because if I see from the Ericsson point of view, a lot of innovation on the RF side, both on the standardization, patent, and chip designing, that happens out of Stockholm or Netherlands, is because of the fact that there is an ecosystem. The Stockholm School of Business, Stockholm School of Technology, both of them, people graduate from there, they join Ericsson, and pretty much there is a close collaboration with the industry and company. So there's a lot of stuff. So basically a PhD student from Stockholm, he will be actually working on 6G or beamformation or a part of a work group that is putting their effort into the standardization. So that is one part. Second, we see that happening. And that is the reason also you see Nokia and Ericsson being heavyweight in the standardization process or even the product development. So that's one. Third was that's an advantage for us because data is the new fuel. So we can, our mathematical skills are really good. The Indian mathematical skills are really good. So we can build on that, our data science and AI/ML skill. So with that, I would say focusing more on the telco NFV skill rather than just the telco skill. So we know telco now because it's been more than 25 years we have been operating telecom networks, so we know what it takes. Now, time for us to leapfrog to the value chain, the bigger value chain. And I think hearing Pamela ma'am and Mr. Mittal and other industry participants, it really helped us because I was really thinking that we are lagging too much behind in standardization. Why the hell with participation of 70 countries, we can't push it. But I think it was great to hear Pamela ma'am seeing that there is a great amount of progress that is happening. So I think it was great to have Professor you and Avinash. Thank you, and for the other panelists. It was a great discussion. Thank you.
Gaurav, we should probably meet offline and discuss how we can use your help in that.
Yeah, sure, ma'am. Sure, ma'am. It will be my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gaurav. Next, we have Prasanna.
Yeah, sure, Professor. Yeah, sure, Professor. I think some of the panelists already touched based. So when we talk of skills, I would look at it as an end-to-end skill, starting with the standards and technology, and then the research and software building. And there are two other vital skill sets that we need to look at. One is the manufacturing, and then the post-development, the deployment and support once we deploy the 5G systems. So now when we look at all these skills together end to end, of course, myself being a part of an MNC, I can easily access the global talent. But in this context, in this today's talk, when we talk of the readiness of India from this skill set point of view, Mr. Mittal spoke about preparing the university grads. I can speak from my experience that we have an University Connect program. So we have association with the premier institutions. So where we are already preparing the ecosystems, the university grads towards the 5G and associated technology. So be it is offering the credit courses, or guiding them on the projects related to IoT, cloud, AI, 5G. That way we are already preparing the ecosystems along with that. And one more point that we need to keep in mind is the innovation. It is not enough, we develop and deploy the standards based 5G, in the beginning. But what matters is the long-term sustainability, and we need to keep improving the user experience through new innovations and new features building on that. So creating an environment where we encourage the innovation is very important. So in this regard, I can quote an experience from our side. So we have something called an innovation day that happens once in a year in Nokia, and we invite the startups, and we invite the universities to come and exhibit their prototypes, their innovations in the 5G and surrounding technology, and we give them that platform and encouragement towards innovation. Of course, coming to research and software building, so we have R&D centers in Bangalore. It's already catering to the India needs and global market as well. The two other vital points I talked about is the manufacturing. One of them is manufacturing. So to quote our own experience, so we have an Industry 4.0 factory in Chennai, which is already producing 5G radios. And today, of course, we do not have 5G deployment in India, but the products that are produced in the Chennai factory are getting exported to nearly around 100 countries. So that is, that kind of a manufacturing capability is already built. And once 5G is there in India, so we could easily, meet the India demands from a manufacturing point of view. And then the post-development deployment and support, which is very vital in maintaining the systems. So similarly, we have something called global services delivery organizations within our company. I'm sure others may have similar setup. But sitting in India, so we are managing the deployment and post-deployment services and support through these centers from India for the global market. So in summary, we are ready for 5G in India from an end-to-end perspective, starting with the technology to software, manufacturing, and post-development support. And we are looking forward for that 5G deployment in India. My concluding remarks for this panel, I think it has been very learning and interesting. Thanks for allowing me to share my views, and also it's been a learning opportunity to listen to many of you. I would say that the industry has seen 3 revolutions in the past, starting with the steam, and then electricity, and then information technology. Now we have 5G, enabled with cloud, artificial intelligence, and robotics, etc. And 4G is causing that fourth industrial revolution, which we are all looking for and taking to take advantage of that in India as well. Thank you, Professor.
Thank you so much, Prasanna. Now over to Radhe for his remarks.
Thank you, Professor. So when it comes to technologies, especially new technologies, I think we are typically mostly not the early adopters of new technology. As an example, a number of countries have already deployed 5G as we speak, while we are yet to start our journey. In terms of learning from experts across the globe, I definitely believe that yes, it can help to fast track the technology adoption. And I guess in post-COVID-19 new normal, learning has become easier than ever. The second point that I want to mention is that being a big market with tech-savvy manpower, I think we have a big opportunity going forward to lead this technology revolution. With softwareization and openness, India can definitely play a big role in the technology ecosystem. Now, coming to my concluding remarks, taking the point that Prasanna mentioned, taking it forward, that unlike the earlier three industrial revolutions, which were fueled by one major technology, in this era, the transformation is fueled by a number of technologies which are maturing at the same time. And I'd like to give another analogy from a superhero movie. So it's similar to the fact that if you look at past superhero movies like Spider-Man, Iron Man, Hulk, etc. Now we are in the era of Avengers, where we have all these superheroes in one movie, and they complement each other to defeat a much more powerful enemy. So likewise, I believe that in this decade, the synergy of 5G, AI, cloud, IoT, etc. will bring much more powerful and newer transformations. It was great to hear the views of all my co-panelists. And finally, I thank you, Professor Brijesh and Avinash, for inviting me in this panel. Thank you.
Thank you, Radhe. So, and now we know about your interest in superhero movies and comics.
So when the kids grow up, you have to watch the movies all over again with the kids. So
yes.
That's how it is.
Wow, nice to know that. Finally, we have Subhash. Your concluding remarks, please.
Brijesh, I would need to leave if you don't mind.
Yeah, of course, please. Thank you so much.
Thank you guys. Thank you so much.
Yeah, Subhash, back to you.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Brajesh. First point, the state of skills. In my mind, definitely India is a talent hub, raw talent hub, I would say, and therefore a hunting ground of all global employers. But having said that, how do you really nurture this raw talent for the country and country's progress is where I think there are certain perspectives I would like to highlight. So the first part that Pamela covered is about the technology creation and making our voice heard into global standardization. We have made a humble beginning. I think there is an opportunity to contribute significantly, like Pamela said. Second part is once this technology we are able to influence can have our say to meet our use case requirement, how do we really nurture our talent to create those finished goods utilizing the technology so that it can serve not only India, but the use case across the globe. Now there, if I look at it, as far as our raw talent is concerned, implementation capability is there. Many panelists talked about the architecting capability, solution capability. In pockets, it has been created. But the key question comes, how do you really create the indigenous entrepreneurial spirit to make sure these talents and capabilities are nurtured in creating those finished goods for local market and the global market? I think that is the next level of evolution from the skill perspective that I think is required. So I guess there is a bunch of soft skills beyond the hard skills that is required. I think there has been talk about the Sweden universities. Gaurav talked about it, and then how it is being nurtured, coming together of the academia and industry. But beyond that, I think there is a mindset change required, where I see the ability to take the risk, the tenacity for something that you are passionate about, taking ownership and sustaining it through it, to see that product creation spirit. That is something I guess it can be nurtured further to take our country to the next level. And of course, design thinking, the ability to think, design it and create it. If ISRO has created lowest cost satellite launches possible, we can do that into the 5G and beyond, right? So that is about the skills part. Coming to the second part, the global talent. I guess one of the areas in terms of, if you look, I think some panelists talked about the virtual working has given a huge opportunity to tap into the global talent. And the key point is, how do you really tap into the talent? So, just to tell some story from my previous organization, crowdsourcing. Crowdsourcing has been fairly successful. I have seen that working. What it really does is hyper specialized cyber security specialist to be leveraged into a workforce to create a meaningful outcome for our customers. In my previous organization, there was an exercise to define the problem to a granular level, such that it is like an atomic entity. The input process, output process, and the processing requirement is defined, and then the output can be created into a outcome based model. So if I have to tap into this global model, I would say that ability of formalism, defining a vague problem into a crystal clear problem, that becomes very, very important. So I think for tapping into the global talent today, there is no difficulty at all. Online platform is there. It's just that ability to crystallize the problem at a granular level, so that it can be decomposed into an atomic entity with a formal mechanism, so that the output can be measured and the commensurate compensation could be given, right? So that is on. On the closing remark, it has been great to be in this panel. Thank you for having me, Professor Lal and Avinash. And I would say that 5G is a huge opportunity. It is coming together of all possible technologies, and it's just a beginning. India is a huge talent hub. India has a huge consumer market. It is really that coming together of everybody and nurturing this raw talent into the next phase of evolution, so that we can become a global technology supplier. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Subhash. And thank you, everybody. It has been a very, very enriching experience for me, and I'm sure it's the same for all of you. Now, I will not try to summarize all that was discussed today, because that is clearly a futile effort. We've had almost 3 long hours of very, very useful, very interesting, very fun and enriching discussions. I will want to end, of course, with, for me, the key takeaway has been the statement that we may or may not be there right now, but we are moving in the right direction, where the operative words are moving and right direction. So we are moving in the right direction, and that is encouraging, that is heartening. So on that note, I would like to thank all the panel members. I would like to thank Vinti and Shanitha for the support, and to Avinash for setting this up. Over to you, Avinash, to close the panel discussion.
My pleasure, Professor. Indeed, there's great opportunity for all of us to, come together and grab it and, get India to the level where some of the developed nations are. In fact, thank you very much for your time. We really ran over by an hour, but I guess it was really interesting, and, everyone kind of stuck and contributed to this very, very enriching, discussion here. We would like to keep this dialogue on. We actually have a LinkedIn group called as Technology Game Changers. You will be receiving a, invitation to join the group. We will have the video, link sent across to you. You can kind of take a look at this, whenever it's convenient for you going forward further. A summary of this, of course, also will be put up, on the, group. The Leaders XC, I mean, the Technology Game Changers group. Once again, thanks for this lovely, discussion, and we hope that we all can certainly kind of stay in touch and take this forward. Thank you again. Thanks, Professor. I'd like to also thank Binti and Sharnita to kind of put this together. Thank you, Sharnita and Binti.
Thank you, everyone. Stay safe. Let's stay in touch.
Thanks a lot.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.